Yo, so if you've come onto this video expecting to not be spoiled from any of the set 7 reveals when I'm going through every single card, I would highly recommend that you leave until the set actually comes out and you get to see the cards for yourself. I know that some people like to wait until a set releases and then buy the cards, or just scroll through them the day before and such. But every single card in set 7 has been released, well, revealed. The set releases on the 7th of March, so a couple of weeks' time from the time that I'm recording this. And the point of today's discussion / video is to go over the cards and pretty much give my own basis and my own opinion on what I think is good, what I think is bad, and realistically give a viewpoint of how I look at cards, value, and a bit of the metagame in general. I will also state that my opinion is my own opinion, and yes, I can be swayed, yes, I can be incorrect. I am not going to be an individual that is going to die on a hill, because I understand with card games, sometimes I can be correct, sometimes I can be like heavily incorrect, and I just know that as sets come out and as things change, these opinions will change. Just to state as well, with this video I'll be giving my top 10 personal cards and the top 10 cards that I wish to explore with. And the last thing as well is that I will put somewhere on the video, probably about here-ish somewhere, the website, or even in the description, the website of which I have gotten all the cards from. Because some of the card spoilers were brought up in multiple countries, so multiple different languages are shown on the cards as well. This basically results in the fact that the cards that I will be showing on the infographics that I'll be displaying will have a mixture of primarily English cards, but the odd cards from varying different languages. When I talk about those cards, I will explain what a card effect does and what it is before I go into a more detailed explanation. So to start off with, we are going to talk about the star system. So the star system that I have is a 1 to 5 star system. If it's a 1, I don't expect the card to make any sort of changes whatsoever to any decks. If it's ran, it's probably ran in trial decks, people that are new to the game, starting out and want to try something else. Those are primarily going to be vanilla cards. There are some cards that I have put as 2 as vanilla cards, but that is because of the fact that they have a shift line down later in the set. To give you a little bit of a spoiler alert, a lot of the cards which are South colours I personally don't value that much, but a good majority of the multicolours I do give a lot of value for, and I will be talking about them near the end of the video. I'll be starting off with doing all the single colours in alphabetical order, so Amber, Amethyst, Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire, Steel, and then going through the multicolours bit by bit. So if you've come to this video expecting me to go straight to like the best cards, etc, you'll probably want to skip later on into the video just to see my opinion on that. So anyway, let's move on to the Amber cards pretty much. Starting off with the 1 stars. These 1-star cards are cards that are, as I said before, I don't really expect to see any meta play. I will put the caveat that a couple of these cards I do think have some sort of merit to them, or like at least one of them does in my personal opinion, which is, oh well, 2 of them, which is the Wreck-It Ralph and the Spaghetti Dinner. So if we were going to go through King Stefan and Susie and Candlehead, with those ones in particular, and also Amber Coil and So Much to Give, the reason why I've given King Stefan and Susie 1-star ratings is pretty simple. They're base outlines. They're good for draft. They are like nice cards to have in a draft, so they are good for that kind of format, very limited. The problem with them, however, is that because of the stat line and because of what the card is and having literally no text outside of vanilla stats, you don't get value from it. With Candlehead, I do think there could be a potential place in her in a more aggressive deck. The problem is that you kind of need to trade her into 2 things from what I remember, because she is a 2/2 for 2 that on banishment heals 2 from another character, or the vice versa, where if something dies she can heal. And the problem with that is that she kind of trades into herself in cards that probably are going to enjoy a better slot in that. You have pre-existing cards like Piglet. There's a few cards in this new set as well, like the Prince as well might have a bit more value than that. Spaghetti Dinner is one that I do think actually has a little bit of merit in there. When I say that, the fact is Spaghetti Dinner probably fits into a hyper-aggressive deck. The problem is, and the reason why I put Spaghetti Dinner as a 1 is that you have to pay 1 to tap it. And playing a deck that has little characters and is going to be going quite wide quite quickly, you're probably going to be spending your spending your ink on the characters over the actual lore gain, because the characters are going to generate you more lore in the base term of things, as hyper aggressive decks tend to run cards which have more than one lore all the time. Daisy Duck, Lilo, Maleficent, Piglet, etc, etc. So I don't think it's as good. And the other cards that you do want to run, which are item cards primarily, are going to be stuff like the Amethyst Chromicon and cards that are going to draw you cards over the lore gain instead. And when you get to a particular point, the further along in the game that you go to, Spaghetti Dinner eventually becomes a dead card. And I think it becomes a dead card quicker than expected. The Wreck-It Ralph, however, might have a little bit of weight to it in a kind of battle box deck, maybe a Mufasa deck potentially. The problem with it is that because it's a 6, you can't cheat it out with certain things. You can't just go, okay, turn 3 I'll play just in time, or I'll revive it and stuff like that. It's unfortunately not a card that's probably desired. There is probably a small deck for it where you can crash things in after playing, like the turn after you played it, with like rush characters and gain like a good chunk of lore. But yeah, Pluto as well, I do think is another card which is kind of on that boat. After playing the after playing the Amber Sapphire support deck, I do think that it has some home in that potentially. The problem with it, however, is that you are contesting quite a few spots for it. I think there are cards that are more valuable in that deck, and Pluto just doesn't really have any shift targets or anything that you benefit from really having it there for support. So, yeah. The Amber Coil and So Much to Give. While So Much to Give does give you a card draw, and I do think it could be bumped up a star level to 2, and giving a character bodyguard, I don't really expect it to be ran that much. Maybe a tech option within Steel Song, but it's going to be rare. I think there are better cards in Steel Song and better removals that you'll probably be running. But a card draw is a card draw, so I do believe I'm probably going to be a little bit incorrect in that, and seeing people actually run it, especially with the changes in the meta probably coming along. The Amber Coil, I think the Amber Coil is kind of cute. The problem with the Amber Coil, however, is that it's only really good in Amber Sapphire, and when it comes to removing damage and stuff like that, you are probably not wanting to remove damage unless it's from a card like Rapunzel, which is a lot more desirable. If you're going for a cheap option, yes, this is a cute card. Yes, it allows you to battle correctly if you wish to. You could kind of go with like the set 1 Moana plays, where you just quest, ready all your princesses, swing again, put a couple of things into Inkwell and save them. So I guess it gives some support to the princess deck. Outside of that, I don't think it really does too much. So yeah. Going on to our 2-drops, our 2 stars. The 2 stars are decks that I kind of do expect to see make happen, or something to happen with them. So the 2-star ones immediately from the get-go are the puppy ones. I will be talking about puppies a bit more in depth later on in the video, but if you have played puppies before, or if you have not seen the puppy cards, the idea of the deck is to play what we call an army deck. Army decks are cards where you can run as many copies as you want. I believe in the puppy deck you can only run 99 copies of puppies if you wish to. But the desirable part of the puppy deck is that you don't run 99 puppies because of consistency issues. So instead, you have to run an X amount of puppies, I would say probably 15, maybe 13, to be desirable, whilst also having other cards to facilitate that. There are people that have been making decks for it, and I've been seeing it online, and I do agree with some of these lists. I think they're quite cool, and I am excited to try it. But we have the Canine Crunchies and Roger, which support that pretty much. For Roger, I like the fact it's a potential heal up to everything, so you can play Roger, you can play puppies, and then you can play other puppies, and if you want to trade in and then get some healing capabilities, you can from Roger, which aren't bad at all. For the Canine Crunchies, being able to give your puppies an additional defense consistently is actually quite relevant, especially in the early game. Turning your puppies from 2 3s to 2 4s is relevant, especially if you go turn 1 that, turn 2 puppy, turn 3 some sort of turn 3 play, like maybe the puppy shift, for example, turn 4 doing Rapunzel onto the puppy shift because you've traded it into something else. It's not bad. It's really not bad. I do agree with it, and I think it's quite good. Am I interested to see if it makes any waves? Yeah. Am I going to be playing it? Yes. I will 100% be trying out puppies. I do think puppies are a very fun deck. The Glass Slipper, I am a big fan of tutors. I'm just going to be honest. Tutors are good. Having to exert a prince to get yourself a tutor is cool. I do think the Glass Slipper may have actually gone down to a 1, but the reason why I've put it in as a 2 is because of the fact it tutors, and the more princesses that come out, the better, realistically. The reason why I think it's a 2 is because of the fact that, the fact it could be argued as a 1 is because you can only run 2 copies in a deck. Whilst the flavour is very much there, I do think the consistency lacks because of the fact that you are only having to run 2. And I guess that's also the reason why I put the Cinderella that's in here as a 2 as well, because it's on play. You can put the Glass Slipper on bottom of deck to gain 3 lore. It's either on play or on quest, but being able to get that instant 3 lore is pretty good actually. It's a good aggression point for princess decks especially. Princesses don't really have an aggression point to them, and it gives you that kind of capability. So yeah, it's not bad at all. The other ones as well is the Bolt support. The reason why I put Bolt in there is because of the shift line. There is another Bolt in Steel that I do think is better, and I do think also is a 2. The reason why I've also put that Bolt in there is because of the Amber Sapphire deck as a 2, because of certain cards allowing you to essentially run it. It allows you to be a bit more aggressive on the Amber Sapphire deck as well, giving yourself the chance to basically turn 4 play Bolt if you wish to over like the turn 4 of I can't remember the guy's name. It's one of the ducks from DuckTales that has evasive during your turn. Being able to do stuff like that is quite nice. Giving yourself a 2/4 is also quite nice because it trades nicely into other things. So yeah. Other cards as well that I've put into the 2, I put the Coda and I put the Snow White in there. Snow White is actually kind of good, I'm going to be honest. I think the problem with her is that she's a bit too late to be played. I think she's only really good if she gets cheated out. But a 4 mana 2/2 that can't be challenged is actually kind of obnoxious. Only certain decks can really deal with it. The problem is also that because of the 2 power stat line, she kind of dies to stuff like, obviously, let Storm Rage on pretty easily to like grab your swords and just classic removal in general. But to kind of give the caveat to it, she also kind of gets by a lot of cards as well. She could be good in hyper aggro, but I don't think she really fits a place in there. If I were to be honest, she probably is a little bit more of a 1, and I'm being a bit more lenient, but Coda I also think kind of fits in the same boat, where he is a good choice for hyper aggro, especially with Amethyst, and I could be incorrect, but I could also not be surprised to see Coda get some sort of playability in the future with it. There is also the card that makes it that your coda can't be challenged. I can't remember the card from that. I think that's from the previous set. That also has some relevancy to it. So, I just mean Question for 3 is quite nice, especially in an already pre-existing aggression deck. Other 2 drops as well. The Calhoun. The Calhoun I've put in partly because of the shift target. The shift target's kind of okay. But the other thing as well is because she actually fits really well into the Amber Sapphire deck, and she also fits really well into Dredge. If you do not know what Dredge is the idea of having a graveyard deck where everything is pretty much like going to your bin and coming back. So you have cards like the Lilo, you'll have like Revive and other bits as well that pretty much keep it going. The 2/4 stat line is kind of desirable, but the fact that you can discard something to give -3 power to something is pretty good. In terms of discard decks, I don't think there's really any discard decks that give you draw power whenever you discard. It's primarily your opponent with Prince John, so I don't think she has too much relevancy. But she does allow you to trade a couple of things into other things. So I'll see how she gets played. If she does get played, is she bad? Nah. Is she good? There are more desirable targets, but I think she's fine for it too. The other 2 drops as well is the Madrigal, the Pepper. With her, the reason why I put her in this kind of 2 spot is because it's the same thing as Alan from set 5, I want to say, where he had some sort of play for the briefest amount of moments and then kind of just fell off the earth. There is probably a deck out there where you run Sleepy's Flute, Pepper, and Alan, and you just kind of generate a good chunk of lore over a day, over like the time, because you can go like turn 2 Sleepy Flute, turn 3 Pepper, turn 4 Alan, and after some 1-drop, and then and then on the same turn being able to use Pepper to sing something to get you card draw and stuff like that, and then you gain like 3 lore from it. Is it amazing? Is it bad? No, not really. Like, I can definitely see this making some play, and I could definitely see people like trying it out, if you get what I mean. Outside of that, I don't think there's anything else on the 2 drops that I can see. Oh, there's the Kenai. He's alright. The thing with him is that if he comes into play exerted, or if you can get him into play exerted, you can kind of keep this loop going. He does work quite well into the shift bolt, which we'll get to later on in the set, because it can be an alternative to the Simba Legendary. I do think the Simba Legendary does this job, but better on a better stat line and on a better quester. But the removal of damage is kind of relevant to some extent. It's the reason why I put him as a 2. If he's ever going to be in a deck, I think he's going to be a tech option. So the Prince as well, a bodyguard 0/5. 5 is actually kind of an annoying stat line. Sure, it dies to brawl, but also you might be quite surprised with how difficult it is actually to defeat a 0/5 stat line after a while. I wish he was inkable, because it would be more desirable to play, but I don't think he's the best. But it's a 2 in there for just slightly more aggressive decks, realistically. Moving on to our 3s, which will be the last of the Ambers. I do think the Amber cards didn't really get much this time around. We have the 2 legendaries, Aurora and Minnie Mouse, which we will talk about in a little bit. We have Isabella Madrigal, which is when she sings, or when someone sings, she can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. The problem with Isabella is that she's not bad. She's just a little bit too late, if you get what I mean. I think there are more desirable cards on 5. If she's going to be put into anywhere, I do think she actually gets put into hyper aggro or hyper aggressive songs. I think the fact that she can't be challenged is kind of relevant, especially for the fact that we are getting more cards which literally say challenge ready characters. Especially in this set, we have quite a number of them. So that's pretty much the big point of why I've put her as a 3. Do I think she gets ran into a deck? Yeah, I think she gets thrown straight into Hyper Aggro. I think Hyper Aggro really likes this card, especially with them running cards that give you card draw and potentially, I believe, some songs as well. The 4 questing is pretty relevant as well. It's very quick. If you are playing Mufasa, she is actually kind of a desirable target as well. She doesn't just die to Brawl, she doesn't just die to Sisu without Ice Block. And she's kind of obnoxious, if I'm going to be honest. Especially in some decks. Steelfast really likes this card, I will be honest. I don't think she replaces Gantu, but she is definitely up there for being an obnoxious card, which should be like respected, in my opinion. But yeah. Moving on to Mittens. So the reason why I put Mittens there is because I think bodyguards are slowly and progressively going to become a thing. You know, we have Maximus, we have the Mickey Mouse Legendary, we now have Mittens. And I think the fact that you can give all your characters +1 lore when you put a card into your Inkwell once per turn is actually kind of relevant, especially in the early game. If you were to do something like play a few bodyguards early on in the game, play Mittens down on turn 6, and you then ink, you actually will progress quite quickly into your game plan. He kind of lives as well. 4/5 is an annoying stat line, especially for late on in the game, I've come to realise, especially after playing Maximus quite a fair chunk. Do I expect it to make a deck? I do expect it to make a deck, actually. Do I expect it to make a tier 1 deck? No. Hence the reason why I've given it a 3-star, but it's not too surprising. I wouldn't be surprised to see a more aggressive version of a deck with bodyguards use him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of becomes relevant later on in the game. So yeah. The other two cards as well, and the last two cards that we'll be talking about with our Amber cards are Aurora and Minnie Mouse. So Minnie Mouse I actually originally had as a 4. I've bumped it down to a 3, but I think it's because she fits stupidly well into hyper aggro. I think she is like, if you're going to replace anything in hyper aggro, you probably change Tiana to her. Because on turn 3 and such, if you turn 1 do Daisy Duck, turn 2 play Minnie Mouse, turn 3 slam 3 1-drops, you get the same result as Piglet essentially. But the caveat is that the longer the game goes on, or the more cards that you draw from stuff like the Chromacon, the more value she actually gets, because the more cards you're looking at playing out. I think Piglet is better. I think Piglet I would rate as a 4, and that's the reason why I've put it down to a 3, is because there is a card that kind of does the job a little bit better. But the fact that you can give Hyper Aggro the ability to trade into other things if need be is actually kind of relevant, especially for Daisy. The other thing as well is that you can actually run Minnie into a more aggressive... well, you can still run into a more aggressive deck. You can actually do things where you can go... Let's say that your opponent's playing an Amethyst deck. The likelihood is that if you're seeing it, you're going to see Mim Snake into Mim Fox. So you'll be like, okay, play my 1-drop, play Minnie, play my 3 1-drops, quest, and this is a little bit of magical Christmas land, but quest up, give one of your opponent's characters -4 until the start of your next turn, and they can't trade into your Minnie Mouse or your Daisy easily. Especially if they're doing like the Snake into Fox line, right? Because I have to play a 1-drop, a 2-drop with the Snake and a 3-drop with the Fox. So it isn't actually bad. I do think it's a good card, and I do think people are not going to respect it as much as you probably realise. Do I expect it to slot straight into Hyper Aggro? Yes, 1000%. I think if you have like two different... the fact is with Hyper Aggro is that the consistency of it is hopefully hitting Piglet, and this is your alternative. If you don't hit Piglet, then you're fine with this. This is absolutely fine as a card. It's a good card. The other card as well is Aurora. So Aurora I've kind of put down as a 3. I do think that she can get bumped down to a 2 because of Steel Song. So she's in there because of Steel Song. Steel Song is a good deck. I still think it's a good deck. Do I think it's the best deck in the format? No, it's got consistency issues. Do I think that she can enable something kind of interesting? Yes. The problem with her is that when you are dealing with her, you need a 1-drop, 2-drop, her and Rapunzel as well as a song. So you preferably want to go Cinderella, Troubadour, Aurora, Rapunzel, heal off the thing, use Aurora to sing another song. The problem with it as well is that you need more songs to give you card draw. So much to give actually might be kind of relevant for this, but the likelihood or hitting what people will call the nuts is using Aurora to sing A Whole New World, healing her back up, or healing something back up to ready her, and then singing like Let Storm Rage On, Along Came Zeus onto another character to give you board presence, like heavy board presence as well, especially if you're going into turn 4 with a Troubadour, Aurora, and a Rapunzel, and a 1-drop to some extent. So it gives you aggression, she can allow you to get very wide boards very quickly if played correctly. Do I think that Julieta Madrigal, the 4-drop or the 3-drop from set 4-5 would get relevant because of this? Yes, I do actually think that as well. It might be a little bit of a different deck, and Steel Song might be seeing some pretty significant changes after this set comes out, but I don't think it's bad. I think it's alright. But yeah, that's pretty much it. In terms of other like decks that I expect, are there any decks that I can see Amber fit into that we just haven't seen before? There is an Amber Emerald deck that I do think is going to become a thing. Again, if you've played in set 1 or set 2 and you've heard of Lemon Lime, which is just Amber Emerald aggro, yes, I do think there are some cards in the set which will allow that, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, moving on to our next colour though, we do have Amethyst. Okay, so moving on to Amethyst. Amethyst has a few cards that I really want to highlight onto, and we'll talk about that later, closer to the end of this section. So yeah, quickly go straight into things. We're going to go straight to the 1-drops, or the 1-star ones. They're pretty simple, as I said before. Tanana is a vanilla. She's a vanilla. Kashikim, vanilla. It's a vanilla. I will say though, a 3-mana 4/3 is a good stat line. If you have ever played Draft or you've ever played Hearthstone, that is a good stat line, and it's a preferable stat line as well because it trades up into instead of trading down. If it had Rush and something else, amazing, but it doesn't, because there's a card called Madam and Fox, which is a lot better for 3. So yeah, other cards as well that I've put in, which is Pain, sorry, or on this one Peck. It's a 1/3. It's another one. It's kind of cute for something like Teeth and Ambitions, to be honest. I remember some people running like Minnie Mouse and stuff for that kind of play, so it could come back. It actually could be something that goes up a little bit. So Tika, or Taka, I can't remember how to say her name, from Moana. I have put her as a 1 because I don't think she's good. I don't think the shift line is good as a spoiler alert either. If you are curious about the shift line, that'll be later on, and I will go into more detail about her there. And that is the reason why I've put her as a 1-drop, not a 2-drop, because of the shift line. So, other cards as well. Bucky, it's kind of whatever. Being banished in the challenge on the 3/2 stat line is not desirable at all, and it's kind of whatever really. Elsa, I do think that she is okay. She is a quest giver, but the problem is you have to run Anna, and Anna doesn't really have that many desirable cards. So yeah, Archimedes kind of terrible as well. The reason being is because you're not really going to be choosing him with an action or ability, or if you are, then I think there are more desirable cards. I will say, however, I do think Archimedes can actually go up to a 2 because of the fact of the shift line from set 6, set 5, Shimmering Skies. Because the shift, from what I remember, is a turn 3 shift, which is actually kind of relevant. So there is some more desirable. There is some more choice of being a bit more desirable for Archimedes. So He's probably like a 1.5 to 2, pretty much. Moving on to our 2s. So I've put the Vanish cards in here, and this is a bit of an interesting one, and people are going to be like, what? Why have you done this? Do I think the Vanish cards are good? Yes. I think some of them are better than these, though. I do think Raj is actually a really good 2-mana 3/3. If I'm going to be brutally honest, I do think he should be a 3 instead of a 2. And if I were to change it, but I'm being lazy with my stat lines, yeah, I do think he is a 3. I think he fits really well into decks. I don't think many cards actually choose him very easily. The problem is, I think I prefer, and I might be a little bit pilled by other cards as well. When I say pilled, I mean like, you know, the Snake. I think the Snake's just a more desirable card on 2. And I think if he gets vanished, you're kind of sitting a little bit like in a duck in a pond with like no one else around, because of the fact that you're just going, okay, cool, my turn 2 play kind of gets shafted because my turn 3 play kind of gets shafted because I can't man him in Fox anymore, because my 2-mana 3/3 has just died out of nowhere. Do I think that Vanish is a cool mechanic? Yes. Do I really like it? Yes. Is there a card that I think is a lot better than Vanish in the set? Yes. And we'll get to that later on. The other card as well is Iago. I think Iago is actually pretty good, if I'm just going to be honest. Evasive 4/6 is a good stat line. He could probably go up to a 3 as well. I think I am being a little bit like critical about it, but ayo. My opinion will probably change, especially during this video as well, apparently. And I think the fact that he is a 4/6 is a good stat line. Do I think that it's enough? Probably not. I do think he could be a 5/6 and get away with it, but the evasive stat line, so the evasive keyword being there as well is also kind of relevant. So, Madam Mim, the 6-drop. I'm only putting it there because of a different card. I think she kind of enables the Tika shift line, which comes up later on in this video. She's kind of, eh. The problem with her is that there's more desirable cards to play on 6, and including shift targets. Like the Ouster's a lot more desirable for thing. If you're playing a more budget option, then yes, the Mim is pretty good. I will be honest, the Mim is good, especially with the fact that you can quest with her, bounce her back like a Fox, or even Dragon if you want to, and try and get some sort of trading from there. Do I wish it's when she challenged? Yes. I wished it was something like when you challenge, you can exert a chosen opponent character. So, yeah. This is my family. Hyper aggro needs draw, hyper aggro needs lore, and the fact that you can do selfish drawing as well is pretty prominent. So the problem with hyper aggro is that some decks run Friends on the Other Side, some decks just don't, because of the fact that it's to give you card draw, and due to it, the only other card that people actually run is the Amethyst Chromicon, and the problem with that card is kind of like it being a double-edged sword. It gives you fuel, but it gives your opponent fuel. And you don't really want to give your opponent fuel in the deck, which is primarily quite selfish. So this is my family, can kind of fit into that slot. Or it can fit into a different slot, not too sure. That's why I put it as a 2. It's also why I put Dolores Magical as a 2 as well. Card revealing is really prominent, especially in a game like Lorcana. Knowledge is knowledge. Knowing what your opponent has is a very prominent thing. It's the reason why Ursula is such a good card. It's the reason why the set 3 Diablo or set 4 Diablo, the 1-drop in green was so good at the time as well. Not because of just the shift, obviously, because the shift is really, really potent. But knowing what your opponent will have and knowing how to play around it is always a very good thing to know. So, yeah, especially with the fact that you can go, okay, I will sing a whole new world in purple steel, and then I will look at your hand after I've done that and go, okay, this is what I'm playing around next turn, or this is what I have to play next. So, other cards as well. Panic's alright. I think Panic's kind of cute. Panic is an enabler for certain cards, such as the Maleficent Rapunzel combo from the set 2 and set 3 legendaries, and the set 2 uncommon respectively. I am a big fan of that combo, and having some sort of thing to enable it is a good thing. The fact that you can move damage over to another character is pretty good, especially with trading capabilities, so I like it. Cool card. The Amethyst Coil is a little bit in the same boat as well. I do think Amethyst Coil could go up to like a 2.5 if I'm going to be brutally honest. But yeah. Honey Marin, that is another one as well. Gaining lore is prominent, and also knowing the card is pretty good. I think it's worse against people who know how to play the game. When I say that, people who are better at playing the game, or people have a better understanding of card pool and stuff like that. There are certain cards which I think are worse the higher play that you get to. There are certain cards that are better in lower end play as well. The Kuzco is actually pretty good, if I'm going to be honest. It's obnoxious. It's a very obnoxious card, and I do think that getting to a point where you can go, okay, sure, I'm just going to start bouncing my like 1-drops or 2-drops, like play it, bounce, play it again, get a card draw out of it as well, isn't actually that bad. Do I think it could be better? Yeah, 100%. Do I think it has some cool capabilities with cards like Jafar? Yes, 100%. I think that Jafar likes this card a lot. I think that it gives more capability to Genie as well. If you have played the Genie Legendary at all, the problem with Genie Legendary is that the second that you put your like hand to the bottom of the deck, it kind of just turns off. And it's also the reason why I put it as a 2 is a bit too volatile. The likelihood that it's going to die pretty quickly. So, yeah. Yzma, I actually really like Yzma. I think Yzma is a very cool card. The fact that it benefits you from having more card draw or more cards than your opponent is pretty prominent, actually. The fact that you can freely do stuff with her is, like, freely draw cards from her as well is pretty good. Because if I recall correctly, it's when she's returned to hand or when she's banished. I believe return to hand, if you have more cards than your opponent, you can draw a card. And in a deck like Amethyst, which draws a lot of cards already, you are very likely to have more cards in hand, especially with stuff like the Fox engine and, the Mem engine, pretty much. Another card as well is the Chernobog. If I'm going to be brutally honest, I cannot remember exactly what the Chernobog does, so I will be getting that up on the side as I am looking it up. But kind of like going through another card as well, or kind of moving on to another card, is the Treasure Guardian. So the reason why I put the Treasure Guardian is as a 2-of is pretty much because of the same reason. It follows over, like, the thing is with the Treasure Guardian is that it follows the same line as Illusions. It's going to pretty much be as good as Illusions are. There isn't a 3-drop illusion. No, I think there is a 3-drop illusion, actually. Sorry. There is a 3-drop 4/3 illusion or 4/4 illusion in thing. So you do actually have quite a nice stat line where you go, okay, play Raja, play Illusion, play Raja, play Cobra, play Treasure Guardian, and then you're kind of like, yippee about it. It's not bad. So Chernobog is on play freeze something. And freezing is actually kind of good. If you don't know what I mean by freezing, I'm taking the term from Final Fantasy's TCG, where you exert an opponent's character, they can't ready for the turn after. Like, freezing's pretty good, Elsa's pretty good still. I'd still think Elsa fits into a few decks. She's obnoxious. Do I think she could be better? Yeah. Do I think she could be worse? Yeah. But, I mean, for the Set 1 Legendary, she was really, really good, and I don't think Chernobog is that bad either. Will he be played? Probably not, but it's likely to see. Moving on to our 3s, our 3 stars, we have Kenai, or Kenai. I'm definitely going to butcher that name, and I'm so sorry. Donald Duck and the Queen. So, Kenai, the reason why I've put him in there is because he actually does a really good job at maintaining hand. I don't think he's that good on a crackback. I actually do think he could go down a little bit in rating, and I think he isn't as good as people are probably saying he is. Do I think he's terrible? No. I don't think he is a bad card. I don't think he's a terrible card by any standards. But the fact is that you can trade into things, and play him back down in a nice way is pretty good. He also kind of does punish newer players as well who will quest consistently with him on the board by being able to give you free lore pretty much. Do I think he is going to be included into decks from the get-go? Yes. I do think Amethyst decks are going to run him from the get-go, and I wouldn't be too surprised if people like drop him either. So we'll kind of see what happens with him. He's either going to be really good or he's going to be really bad. I think he's kind of in like the mid boat, and I think he is going to be Tecton. And that is also another card, well, using that kind of notion to move on to the second card that I want to talk about, which is Donald Duck. I think he's in the same boat. Do I think Donald's good? No, if I'm going to be brutally honest. There is a deck that I do want to try him in, and I do think there is a deck that does actually become a thing, which is Blurple Toolbox. If you don't know what I mean by Blurple Toolbox, the idea is that you use your deck as a bunch of one-offs, and you use the Merlin Legendary to toolbox through your deck for the specific card that you need for the matchup. You know, if you need to get rid of your opponent's units, you go, okay, cool, I'll shift on and let it go, get my one copy of that. If my opponent's playing a slower game or like a quicker game, you can go, okay, I'm going to get Donald out because I need to slow down my game plan to fit against yours, and stuff like that. And that's why I think he's good in that kind of deck. Do I think that deck becomes a thing? Yes. I actually do think that Toolbox is a good kind of deck, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Toolbox kind of take off a little bit. But yeah, no, that's just what you get with tutors, right? Do I think he is like the best legendary in this set? No. Do I think he's a necessary legendary for the game? Yes, 1000%. I think that this card is good. I think it's simple, and if you are not aware on how it works, it is not whilst he is... So when you play him, it doesn't change the game state to just your opponent needs 25 lore to win the game consistently, even if he's off the board. It changes it to that point when you play him, and while he remains on the board. It's a continuous effect and not an automatic effect where you play the card. Certain cards will say when this card is played, or when this card does a particular thing, do a particular thing. And because of Donald being that he is just a consistent effect, once he is removed from the board, your opponent needs 20 lore to win the game. If your opponent is on 21 lore and he removes the Donald, he or she removes a Donald, or they win the game, pretty much. The Queen is another card which I think is really good. If I'm going to be honest, she's GOAT stat lines. GOAT stat lines are good. She can get you more lore than GOAT actually as well. Especially with you trading into things. I do think Queen's probably on like a 3.5. Do I think she gets ran over GOAT? No. Do I think she gets ran with GOAT? Yes. I think she is a very good card. If you don't know what she does, she is a tap self ability. Choose 3 cards from your opponent's bin, put them back into the bottom of the deck, or shuffle them back into your opponent's deck. And if you put a princess in there, and gain 3 lore. And then if you put a princess in there, gain another lore. So you gain 4 instead. So she can actually have more value than GOAT at points, and she can have less value than GOAT at points. Do I think she is better than GOAT? No. I think GOAT is better, but that's because of the fact that GOAT pretty much results in an automatic win kind of scenario, where if you can't remove him and they're on like 19 lore, you can't really do anything about it. There is one card in the game that does stop that, which is Peter Pan. But yeah, pretty much. Do I think she is going to get ran? Yes, 1000%. I would be surprised if people don't run this card. I think this card's sick. I think this card is actually really, really prominent. So, and talking about cards that are prominent now, and our first 4-star of this set actually, and are probably one of our only 4-stars in the base colours. It is, I can't remember the name of the card, but it's the 2-drop action, which is each player draws 3 cards. draws 3 cards is really prominent. I think this goes straight into hyper aggro. I think this is a hyper aggressive card. I think this is a Jafar card. This is 100% a Jafar card. This is 100% like a draw 3. Draw 3 is a very prominent thing. It's also a mill card, if I'm going to be honest. If you are playing a mill deck, this runs straight into a mill deck. You want to be able to run this because card draw is really good. Card draw wins you games, you know, you get the answers for it. Sure, your opponent gets cards. Cool. But who cares if you're winning the game before them, right? But yes, I think this gets ran straight into hyper-aggressive decks. I think this might actually get ran as a tech option into other cards as well. Finders Keepers was a good card, but I think Finders Keepers was a bit more desirable because of the fact that it's yourself drawing 3 cards. But the problem with Finders Keepers is that you have to pay 3 more ink to do so. There was a time period where people were running it in Ruby Sapphire and Ruby Amethyst, and it makes sense as to why. It's a deck that needs card draw and gives you more answers. Do I think it gets run into other decks? Yes. Do I think it gets ran into Blood Bowl? Yes. Do I think it gets ran into Ruby Ami? Maybe a little bit. But it's really dependent, realistically. But I do think the place that this does actually fit right into is Hyper Aggro. I think Hyper Aggro takes this card and goes, bam, we're going straight in. We're going, go. But because it just doesn't have card draw, that's the biggest problem. It doesn't have feasible card draw. You can run the card draw engine if you wish, but the problem is that with Hyper Aggro, you want to win you want to win the game fast, so you want almost all the cards that you are getting to get you either more cards at a lower stat line, or be the cards that give you like quicker questing capabilities as well. I think this works really well in Purple Steel as well. I think Purple Steel loves this card. Being able to draw cards in a deck that's also quite aggressive and doesn't give you the capability of like losing out, yeah, that's great. Do I think it replaces Doc? Maybe a little bit. Do I think Doc probably is better than it? Yeah, at some points. So that's the reason why I put it as a 4. It could be a 3.5. I do expect it to see him make some waves. So yeah. But yeah, no, that's all the Amethyst cards. So I'm gonna go over to the Emerald cards right now. So let's talk about that. So moving on to Emerald, pretty much the same stuff. So the 1-drops, pretty obvious. There's some vanillas in there. Berlioz and Drizella, yeah, they're not desirable cards in terms of what you're going to be running. You will have better options, pretty much, especially for those kind of things. Yzma, Yzma could probably go up to like a 1.5. The reason why I'm put Yzma as a 1 is because they're more desirable 2-drops realistically in green. Ursula's a massive 1, Banzai is massive as well, and I don't think drawing a card and discarding a card is really relevant enough to fuck it off. Cheshire Cat, 5-drop, 4/3, potentially deal 2 damage. It's not desirable, it can be played around. That's pretty much the main thing for it. He's a Tramp actually might be up to like a 2, if I'm going to be brutally honest, maybe a 1.5. Because there is actually a deck that is advertised to be hyper aggressive with Lemon Lime, but I think Lemon Lime wants to just play aggressive. I don't think it really wishes to trade into other things, so that's the reason why this card actually might fit into another kind of thing as well. Like, there might be another kind of deck where you battle box with your opponent a little bit, and that might be more desirable, but yeah, pretty much. In the theme decks, kind of cute. I'm not surprised. The Duchess is another one. A 3/2. 3/2 is not a bad stat line, but the problem is that we have a more desirable card in Banzai in the same stats as well. So yeah, pretty much that's like my reasoning behind that one. The other one as well is Anastasia. The problem with Anastasia is pretty simple. It's kind of like the same reason as Fred, or the same reason as Cruella, or other cards which say when this is challenged, and you know, like Battle Shift Archer, you know, the Swift Archer, the shift target from set 2, I want to say. Well, I don't think they're desirable cards because you can't feasibly make your opponent challenge you. It's one of those things. It just doesn't work well enough. So unfortunately, I don't think they're good cards. Do I like cards which have to force your opponent to deal with them? Yes. Do I think they're good sometimes? Not really. It depends. Moving on to our 2-drops though. I like the Basil. Oh, sorry. No, there was another one. The one, which is the Donald as well, which I think the Donald's actually kind of in the same boat. 2 mana, 1/1, quest for 2. When this dies from a challenge, you can return action card from your bin to hand. The problem with it is that there are not... In Pirates and in this one in particular, you're not really having that many cards that kind of want to just challenge Donald. And if you are... I don't think for 2 you're going to really be enjoying it that much. There is pardon me, there is a line that you can go, okay, Curse Merfolk, Donald, and just be aggressive on a smaller board, but I don't think it's as desirable as other things as well. And then the last one is Thomas O'Malley. I think a 4/2 ward, it's kind of whatever. If anything, I think that 4/2 ward could be started for 2 lore, and I still don't think that card would be that ran. I don't think a stat line of that is that desirable. Oh, and the Baymax as well. So the Baymax is pretty much the same as Bonsai, but he can be inked, and that's incredible. But he comes and plays Exerted and just dies. Oh, that's incredible. It's not that good. If he lives a turn, yeah, he actually becomes a bit more prominent, but I don't think he's going to be that good, especially when there's other cards which just do his job but better. The problem with Baymax is kind of why would I play this over Bonsai outside of the ink, And I think a lot of people just don't think about that, or a lot of people don't question that enough, if you get what I mean. But moving on to our 2-drops. Going back to the Basil, I think he is a good card. I actually do really like him. So there is another card in the set which is called the Queen, and we'll get to it later on, but a little bit of a spoiler alert, I guess. In green-red, she does give damage to all characters as they come out, and unfortunately, I don't think green-red actually gets to late on in the game that easily, so Basil doesn't really get that much, isn't that prominent, but I do think he's a cool card. I do like him, and I would definitely like to test around with him a bit more. I think he's probably sitting on the 1.5 boat, if I'm going to be brutally honest, but yeah. Lady... The reason why I put this here is because of the shift target. I actually think the shift target is good. Do I think that Tramp is good though as well though? Yeah, actually. I think that Lady and Tramp are both pretty good for your turn 1, turn 2 play. Especially if you want to go turn 1 Lady, turn 2 Tramp, or double Tramp or double Lady into Tramp, and have a more aggressive early game. Because that's the thing as well, especially with this kind of deck. So I quite like this actually. I think this card's pretty good. And yeah, I think the Tramp is actually a good card as well. I think he's a Tramp better than he's a Tramp, if you get what I mean. Because you're playing it on a character as well, especially if it's a potential 1-drop. A 1-drop 1/3 that does the exact same thing is pretty good. So yeah. Lady Tremaine, the legendary. I think this is going to be one of the worst legendaries in the set. I think it probably is the worst legendary of the set, I'm going to be honest. It's good in group play. The reason why I put it as a 2 is because it's actually a fun card in group play for discard decks. It can be annoying, it can be really annoying actually for a lot of decks if you're not prepared for it. So yeah, that's the main reason why I put it as a 2. If I'm going to be honest, if group play wasn't a thing, I was going to put it as a 1. I don't think it's that good of a card. I think there are more desirable cards. Bruno does the exact same thing, but on a song, so it can be cheated out for free. 6 mana, 3/3, uninkable. It should be inkable. Yeah, pretty much. That's my reasoning. It can actually see a little bit of play in the blue-green deck that has been running around a little bit, the discard deck. I do actually think it has some play there. I think it has play in Queen, but yeah, outside of that, I don't think it has any desirable play realistically. Emerald Coil, I don't think Emerald Coil is bad. The reason I put it as a 2 is because the evasive line is actually quite significant. There are cards out there like Maui Halfshark that you do want to trade into sometimes, Alsa you do want to trade into sometimes, or having evasive at sort of start of your next turn is actually quite relevant for certain cards as well. That's the reason why I put it as a 2. I wouldn't be surprised to see this run as a tech option into the pre-existing tempo green Amethyst deck. So yeah. Other 2 drops as well is the Pete. I quite like this card. I am a fan of action decks which don't require songs, so that's the reason why I put it there. I think it's more of like a 1.5 if I'm going to be brutally honest. But I want to give it a bit more leniency, so I put it as a 2 of. Being able to banish an item is pretty relevant, and also having a shift target is also another relevant thing to it. On top of that, the pirate tagline is actually quite big as well, because pirates aren't bad, but giving more pirates more support is actually quite relevant just in general as well. So yeah, that's the reason why I put it as a 2 of. The other card as well, I don't believe there are any 2 the King of Hearts. So damaged characters can't challenge your characters. The reason why I put it there is because of the Queen. Other cards as well, Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell is actually pretty relevant as well, but I think Queen kind of just does the Tinkerbell job but a bit better. So you can be more aggressive, you can go, okay cool, I'm going to turn 3 Queen, turn 4 King of Hearts, good luck. You can't challenge my characters for pretty much the rest of the game unless you deal with Queen. So yeah, no, I think there is actually an obnoxious stat line, and I could be very, very incorrect and be like, the King of Hearts Queen play is one of the most obnoxious plays in the entire game. That can actually happen, because I think certain decks just hate it. So we'll find out what happens. I think it's going to be one or the other. I think it's either going to be insanely good or it's just going to flop really, really quickly. So there's probably is a deck out there. The other 2 drops as well is the Hero Hamada. So when you play a Floodbond onto this draw card, it's cute. There is a couple of cards that do actually work with him, and do I think it's bad? No. Do I think being able to convert a shift into a draw is good? Yes. I do like the fact that he can give you a draw, and there is actually a hero later on in the set that I do think is pretty good actually. So I think that it's a pretty desirable card, and the main reason why I've given it the 2 is because of the fact that it is a shift target that is going to be nice with him later on in the game. Wake Up Alice as well as the last one. It's cute. The reason why I put it in there though is because of the Queen. I think the Queen is like a big engine for this, and I do think that when I go to it later, the Queen probably has a bit more of a desirable stat line than you expect, realistically. Moving on to our 3s, we have a couple of 3s, or like a few 3s actually, looking at it again. The Return of Hercules. The Return of Hercules is a pretty desirable card in my opinion. I think I've put it as a 3 a bit more because of the fact that I think it's a cool card. I think this is one of my favourite cards in the entire set. I love cheating out cards. Cheating out cards is super fun. And the one thing that you should know, which I've done some research online, I'm fairly certain that because of player priority you get to choose first, but all effects will go off. So yeah, I think like how it works is you'll play your character, your opponent plays their character, your effect goes off first, and then your opponent's effect goes off first because of how the player priority goes. But being able to play out big guys is fun. Do I think it kind of fits into a deck? Yeah, I think there is a deck. I actually think the Mufasa deck really likes this. If you can cheat out the action early, yeah, it's kind of cool. If you have to play it on 5, it's kind of cool. I think there are certain decks that prefer it. and then there's certain decks that don't. Am I glad that we finally got a legendary action? Yes. 100%. 1000%. I'm so glad that they've actually gone, yeah, we're going to give you a legendary action. It's going to be a fun and interesting one. The thing as well as this as well is that you want to be a little bit careful because this card actually can spiral. There is a potential chance that there is a deck that does come out which this card is relevant in, and that's why I put it as a 3. I think cheating out cards is good, but I do think that also cheating out cards should be coming with a caveat that expect it to potentially break the game at some point. Just be a little bit careful when you come across that point though. That's why I put it as a 3 for the most part. If anything, right now I do think it's more of a 2. Do I think it's going to be an expensive legendary? No. Do I think it's going to be the best legendary in the set? No. But moving on to other cards that are in my 3. Daisy Duck. So Daisy Duck, when you put a card into your inkwell, you can bounce an opponent's card to hand. Yeah, I think this card's good, if I'm going to be honest. It's only on once per turn, but I do think if you have multiple out, you are kind of just laughing. I do think it gets ran into a 2 of. I think this replaces Mother Gothel in the green Sapphire deck, the discard deck. I think that this is better. The problem with Mother Gothel is that your opponent decides what they choose, and I do not like that. Being able to choose what your opponent being able to choose what they want to have back in their hand, yeah, not the best. So, but a 6/5 is an obnoxious stat line to get rid of outside of B prep. Being able to bounce your opponent's units in a deck that does ramp quite quickly, yeah, good card. It kind of maintains the game, and you do get to a point where you just start bouncing their stuff back to the hand and then discarding everything. And it does actually get to a point where you do force a deck state where your opponent can't actually deal with your board outside of doing like a B prep or something like that. So, yeah. The Shere Khan. I think the Shere Khan's actually pretty damn good, but I only think it's good in Hyper Aggro. Like a green version of Hyper Aggro. Being able to have a 4/4 stat line that discards your entire hand. You probably get away with Lemon Lime because you're going to be running Lilos, so it's fine if you discard Lilos because you'll just play in the turn after. And having a 4/4 stat line is good, especially at Quest for 4. It's an obnoxious card, and the reason why I put it as a 3 is because I wouldn't be surprised to see a super aggressive deck that goes turn 1, play like a 1-drop, turn 2, play like a couple of 2-drops. Play like a 2-drop, turn 3, play a 2-drop and a 1-drop, or just like 3 1-drops. Turn 4, slam this down, discard whatever 1 card's in your hand, because it doesn't matter at that point, because that is going to give you more value. Yeah, card's good. I actually really like this. And the other one as well is, I cannot pronounce his name. I think it's Grunge. I assume it's meant to be Grunge or Gruenge. This card's cool. So in the deck that I really like, which is Blue Mufasa into Do It Again and You Came Back, I think this card's sick. I think this card is easily ran into that deck. There is a card which I'm running right now for safety reasons, which is the Ursula, because I wanted a more desirable 2-drop, and I think this gives you a more desirable 2-drop as well. The thing with it as well is it does allow you to play cards like How Far I'll Go on 3 instead of if you miss your Tippo pretty much. So you still kind of get your ramp from it, and you can actually get some other actions going as well. So yeah, card's good. Card's genuinely very good. That's pretty much what I would say about it. I do think that this card should be looked out for, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the future this card makes a bit more play than people expect. Especially for people that want to cheat out things. So keep that in mind whenever you're actually playing this card. Do I think it could be like a 2.5? Yeah. Do I think it could be a 4 in the future? Maybe. But that's very dependent on the cards that get revealed later on in the line, you know. And yeah, no, those are all my Emerald cards. I don't think Emerald as a overall package this time has had a much stronger boat than the other ones, but it's not bad. It could be a little bit better. It could be a little bit worse. You know what I mean? But yeah, no. Moving a bit onto Ruby now. So yeah. So moving on to Ruby. The 1-star ones are pretty self-explanatory, as I have said in the previous ones. Edgar is a vanilla. We've got company. There are better cards. I want to say it's Ready Your Swords or something like that. The Peter Pan action where you have Captain Hook, which is deal 1 damage to your characters, ready them, they can't challenge this, they can't quest this turn, is better than We've Got Company. We've Got Company isn't bad, but the fact that you're giving Reckless to everything is not the best thing in the world, especially when there will be board states that you just don't want to trade into at all. So it might be fun in Maui Shark, but outside of that, not really worth it. Out of order, if I'm going to be honest, you have a card which does out of order better, and that card's not ran. That was in the last set, where it's just banish chosen character, draw a card on 7 unlinkable, and that wasn't ran at all. I can't remember the name of it. All I remember is it's like Jafar staff. The other ones as well, the Stamina Brother with a patch, and the Matchmaker. I'm not a big fan of lore losing characters. I don't think lore losing is that good, unless you can prominently make a deck where it just does it all the time consistently. It can be annoying, but I don't think it's going to excel you to win your game plan, if you get what I mean. I don't think it's easy to make a whole game plan dedicated to it, so yeah. Toby and Phantom Bolt. I don't think Phantom Bolt is good, and Toby, I actually don't think Toby's that bad, because of the fact that Flynn exists. You should probably be able to run Toby into you should be able to probably run Toby a bit more desirably than Felicia, for example, because you can go Toby, Flynn thing. But yeah, I do think Moana is a better card, however, for a 1-drop, so that's why I put it as a 1. I do think Toby could be a 1.5 if I'm going to be honest. So yeah, Cirque is the last 1-drop that I have on my thing, where it's just a 2 mana 2/2 that quests for 2. Yeah, these cards have been ran before. These cards are not ran. There isn't a shift target for it, so it's just not desirable. Maybe one day in the future. It'll take a while though. But I do like the artwork. I think the artwork is really cool. Moving on to our 2-drops, or our 2 stars, we'll go with the obvious one, Baloo. I don't think Baloo's good. I think Baloo's only good in one particular deck, and as a tech option in Mufasa. And Gaston. Gaston, obviously. Yeah. Outside of that, I just don't think it's that good. The problem is that he needs to hit very specific requirements to do so, and I don't think you're building a deck specifically to make Baloo good. Do I think he is a cool card though? Yes. Do I think that he is a card that I would love to build around? Yes. Do I think he's one of my favourite cards in the entire set? Yes, actually. I think he's in my top 10. But I don't think he is a good card, if you get what I mean. So, yeah. Goofy's alright. The problem is that it's kind of in the same boat as Mulan. Mulan has a very similar effect to Goofy from set 1, the one where she's on a horse running, with the horse galloping. I think that is the same boat. Goofy and her have the exact same thing. They just don't work. Do I think that Goofy could be bumped down? Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a dud. Other ones as well. So the Card Soldier is when you have a damaged character and play as a 3/2 consistently. Honestly, he could probably bump down to a 1. There's other cards in blue that I've come to realise are obnoxious, which are Nick Wilde. I think he's actually quite obnoxious 1-drop if you are playing the build that supports around him. But Card Soldier doesn't get that desirability because you need to be a 3/2, you need to be able to trade in with other cards, and I don't think there's many cards that actually have that desirability to go, okay, I'm just going to trade straight up. So, yeah. The other 2-drop as well, the other 2-star ones as well, the other Stabbing Brother without a patch. Rush isn't bad, and giving Rush to the other one isn't bad either. The problem is that he's a 3/4 for 4, and I think there are better cards that you want to play him for that do better. And I actually think there is a card in 3 that does better in purple, which everyone knows, which is the Fox. I think Fox is way too good, and I think that it's a better card than this one, is pretty much what I'm looking at. Cogsworth, a 5/3 for having a card in your bin. Kind of cute, honestly. Annoying to deal with, trades up quite nicely, and with a particular card that we'll be talking about in the next colour, yeah, I don't think it's bad. Devil's Eye Diamond. I am not a fan of this card. I think it's either going to be really good actually, or it's going to be really bad, but I think it's only good in the Queen deck, if I'm going to be honest. Battle Box, I don't really mind. Actually, to be fair, it could be good in Red Steel as well, because Red Steel is advertising the ability of challenging readied characters quite consistently. So that is also another play as well, another line. So yeah, see how it goes. The other one as well, the Ruby Coil. Ruby Coil is pretty good, if I'm going to be honest. But I think that you're probably not going to be using it as much as the other coil that I'll be talking about in a moment as well, which I think does the job but better. I think it could actually get bumped up to a 2.5 if I'm just going to be honest. And that's primarily because of the fact that the Ruby Coil does give you some benefits and bonus for playing it with Sapphire as well. If I'm going to be honest, it's probably going to be teched in. It might be like a Vital Sphere kind of situation, but I think Vitasphere is better than Ruby Coil. It is the same mana cost in theory, I believe, from what I remember, but because I think Vitasphere you have to pay 1 to sack it, or it might just be you have to sack it to give rush to something in power. So, what else as well? There is the other Grandma, which from what I remember it's like when she quests you can give a character +2 power, and I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good though. There are more desirable cards in that kind of colour, if you get what I mean. But being able to go turn 1, play some 2/2, or play like a 1/2, turn 2, play this, turn 3, quest with her, trade in with something, is quite nice. Will she be teched in? Maybe in some decks. Can I see her not run any play at all? Yeah. That's pretty much it. I can see her pretty much being like a 1.5 over a 2. And that's pretty much it realistically. Milo's good, but that's because Mulan, if I'm going to be honest. The reason why I put this as a 2 is because Mulan's a thing. And this is being the legendary Mulan in set 4, where she can ping off multiple different things, where you can use Milo to sing an action, give it to the Mulan, that will then shift into the bigger Mulan and kill 3 things. Yeah, I think that the Milo's actually pretty good, and that's the reason why I put him as a 2, maybe a 2.5. Do I think he could be bumped down a little bit? Probably. I can see the card being ran though. I can 100% see this card being ran, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the card being ran as well. The other card as well is Cybug. Cybug, the thing that I'm upset about with him is that it's not an army card. It should be an army card. There's more bugs. There's a load of bugs. Make it that you can run as many cards as you want, please. Because this card will actually be really good, or like a lot more desirable if it was an army card, if anything. Do I think it kind of falls into the same boat as Puppies? Yeah. Do I think it could be a lot better? Yes, 100%. I wished it was an army card. Even if it's just like a 1 mana 1/1, gain 1 power for each other Cybug in play, but you can run as many copies as you want. Cool card, really cool card, in all honesty. And then the last card, which I do think can get bumped up, if I'm going to be honest, is the Lyle Rook. Rook. So I think that this card's cool. I really like this card, and I think that this card is probably better than people are going to give it credit for in Ruby Sapphire. Board wipes are prominent. Lyle is annoying, and he gives more power. Like he slowly clears the board bit by bit every single turn and makes it a bit more annoying. He also kind of finishes / closes out games against more aggressive decks, if you get what I mean. So, but being able to board wipe kind of twice or more if you're running him with the Popsicle engine, where you just sack the Popsicle, heal him off, and then put another card into Inkwell for him to deal more damage. Yeah. Do I like this card? Yes. Do I think this card's cool? Yes. This card is a really cool card design, and I really like it. I'd like to see more cards like this, if I'm going to be honest. Other cards as well. There is actually one more card as well that I did kind of miss, which is Maurice. Banishing an item to draw a card, pretty good, if I'm going to be honest. Banishing Maurice's machine when we get to it later to banish another character is the reason why I put it as a 2, because Maurice's machine might actually get ran. Do I think it is going to get run? Probably not, if I'm going to be honest. So Maurice will probably be a bit more of a dud rare. But I can see a build where he is actually put in somewhere because of that item. Especially with the fact there are quite a fair chunk of support cards for items now. You have the Prince John that allows you to play items for free. From bin as well, so you can actually sack it to play Maurice and to play other things as well. So, yeah. Moving on to the 3-drops, we have a few 3-drops, one being the Moana. The Moana is actually really good, if I'm just going to be honest. Being able to challenge one thing and choosing another character to challenge another thing is really prominent. I think she gets a place into Red Steel, if anything. I think Red Steel is the deck that she has ran in. Do I think she potentially ran into more decks? She actually could be teched into Ruby Ami, if I'm just going to be honest. Being able to trade into one thing, give another card power, bounce Moana back, and then ink her and play another unit after trading into 2 more things with like a snake and a fox. Yeah, actually pretty damn good, if I'm just going to be honest. The evasive line is also pretty prominent, so... Queen of Hearts. Queen of Hearts is good. I like this card. I really like this card. 1/4 that can be like a 4/3. Yeah. That's sick. Do I think that she is like not runnable? No, not at all. I actually think that this card is really good. I think that this card is going to get ran into more decks than we probably expect. And don't be surprised if you see this card being surprisingly better than people expect. I think she is an amazing draft card as well. I think that this card is absolutely fantastic in draft, especially with the fact that she becomes a 2-mana. Like, you could probably make her a 2-mana like 4/3 quite easily. Especially if you played the card soldier right before her and stuff like that. And the other reason why I put her as a 3-drop is the shift line that's in the multicolors, and she also shifts really well into the like other queen as well, the red one, which is like when you challenge something, draw a card. So you know it's just more queen line really. She is a card that I do want to test. She is a card that I do want to play around with. Do I think she's one of the better cards in the game? Yes. Do I think she's probably one of the best cards in the set? Probably, honestly. If I'm just going to be honest, I think she's more like a 3.5 to 4. But, yeah. Unconventional tool. So, this card is there because of another card that's coming out as well. And that everyone's going to go kind of crazy about, because everyone's going kind of crazy about it, and everyone has discussed this card already, or the cards that are coming up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, as a spoiler alert, it is the Sapphire Common Bow 3-drop 3/3. So... yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. But when this is banished, you can play your next item for 2 less, which does result in certain items being played for free, pretty much. Items have become a lot more desirable, and this card is kind of like one of the reasons for it. Do I think it is a crazy good deck? No. Do I think that this card is potential to like hit the nuts? Yes. you hit the nuts, you hit the nuts, right? That's pretty much it. Do I think that the card is worth running? Yes. Do I think it's a 4-of? No. People are going to try and break it, pretty much. People are going to try and break the cards. Do I think it's going to be ran as a 4 for consistency's sake because of this interaction? Yes. So we'll find out what happens and see what happens pretty much from it. So yeah. But moving on to our one and only 4-star from this, in my personal opinion, is because of the Ratigan. This is because of the Malborn winning list, if I'm just going to be honest. I do think that Ratigan finds a place, and I think that Ratigan's a good card, if I'm going to be honest. Maui Half Shark is a good card. Maui Half Shark desires being able to run actions, and Ratigan really likes that as well. Being able to continue your plays into just going develop your brain, gain 2 lore instead, because of Ratigan being on the board preemptively. Being able to do how far I go with Ratigan is also pretty prominent as well. So I do think that this does fit into that deck. Do I think it is like the be-all and end-all of that deck? No. Do I think it finds a place into a competitive deck? Yes. I think that this card is good. I think that this card is really good. And I think people should be considering it when building decks. Do I think it's the best legendary in the set? No. I think the best legendaries in the set are coming up very, very soon. But yeah, pretty much that's it realistically. I think Ratigan's good. Can't really say much else to it. Do I think he's ran into other decks? A little bit. I think he can be ran into Rubyami a tiny bit as tech options, but I think his main desire is going to be in a deck such as Ruby Sapphire, where you're running the engine of like the Maui Half Sharks, and you're not really going for the Sisu engine, you're just going for actions primarily. So yeah. Okay, oh boy. This one's gonna be fun. So you may already notice that I've put 3 5-stars in this one because Sapphire is got the nuts. If I'm just gonna be brutally honest, I think Sapphire is the best color in this entire set. If you're not playing a Sapphire deck, you're probably not playing meta. If I'm just gonna be honest with this one. At this point. So Sapphire's got a bunch of great cards this set, like some really, really good cards. The puppy package is fun. There's a reason why a lot of the puppies are 2s in this. But we'll go straight through it. The ones are pretty obvious. Moana, kind of whatever. She wasn't good. She wasn't going to be ran anyway. She still isn't going to be ran unless like a good 4-drop Moana shift target comes in. That becomes quite desirable after that. But there are better cards for 3 on Moana. So Taloy's, yeah, it's a 1/3. Cute. The other ones as well. The Farnsworth card, from what I remember, is a support that when you put a card into your Inkwell, you can give a character resist 1, which I think is quite cute. I actually think it does become a bit more of like a 1.5, but I don't think it's that good either. I don't think it's desirable. It could actually be ran in the Amber Sapphire deck, but yeah. Honey Lemon, I just don't think Honey Lemon's good. If I'm going to be honest, you're not really running Honey Lemon for like her intended effect. The problem with it is that when you're using a shift, you probably prefer like the Baymax charging station, which is here, where you get to draw cards over just healing cards, especially with other cards as well. Geaton, the Mole, 3/4 is actually a pretty nice stat line as well for 3. But I don't think it's desirable. Other ones as well. Matthias, give your Queen characters wards. Okay, Queen, we don't really care about Queens that much. I don't think Queens is that good at the moment. Unfortunately, tribal decks are not that good. And I don't think there's enough support for Queens or Princesses right now to make them a viable good deck. But carrying on from that though, and moving on to our 2-drops very quickly, because there weren't that many 1-drops. They're 1-stars in my opinion on this one. Penny's actually pretty alright. A 2/1 that quests for 2, which has ward on a hero deck. Whilst heroes aren't that good, if I'm going to be honest, heroes just isn't a good deck. This is actually a really good support for heroes. Being able to quest for 2 quite early is pretty nice. I did actually miss the Robin Hood as well, sorry, just to say. Robin Hood is... Nah. you have more desirable things than 3. You don't want to be playing a support. That's basically it. But no, going back to Penny. Penny is actually alright, if I'm going to be honest. Yeah, giving a character, well, her having ward on like a 2/1, I do think that Noi does a better job, if I'm just going to be honest. The two drop that gets like resist and ward if you have an item in play is better than this. But Penny does actually have her own kind of niches and benefits as well. All the puppy cards, it's puppy support. It's support that gives puppies like better like outcomes and such. The fact that Pepper can give you ramp, whilst Lucky can give you like card draw, potentially card draw in a deck that you're primarily going to be playing puppies. It's kind of cute. I like it. I like card draw in this. So yeah. The other ones as well is the Clarabelle. So the reason why I put the Clarabelle in there is because of the fact that it gives your support characters +1. That is actually very, very relevant, especially for the fact that you are probably going to be playing a line where you go, okay, Clarabelle, support something for more power to be able to do something like the Minnie Mouse on the turn after, or the World's Greatest Criminal Mind on the turn after as well, is actually quite relevant. So I'm not gonna knock it. I think it gives other characters who have support +1. I cannot remember though. And also it gets around Brawl. You get to make your teachers go around Brawl and stuff like that, so that's why as a 2 it does slot into the deck. So yeah. The 1-drop, I can't remember the name of the actual action, but look at the top 4 cards of an opposing player, of any player's deck, put on top or bottom. There's a reason why that card's kind of good, and that's because it's knowledge, and also there is a card that does actually benefit from knowing what the top cards of your deck are. So yeah, pretty much. Baymax is okay, support is alright. On place, top 4 out of Floodborn is alright as well, especially in a deck that's going to be running a lot of Floodborn. So yeah. Marie is actually okay as well. That's the reason why I put her as a 2. I think she's more desirable as like a 1.5. Being able to use her to trade into another thing with a pre-existing character isn't bad. Damage manipulation isn't bad either. Just being able to know how to use it correctly is like the main point of it. Baymax Charging Station, this is the reason why I think it's better than Honey Lemon. Turning your shifts into draws is pretty good. Turning your heroes into draw 2s is pretty good. Stuff like that realistically. Outside of that, I don't think there's any other 2-drops in 2 stars in this one, so oh no, there is a Dawson actually, sorry. Once during your turn, whenever a card is pinned to your ink, I'll look at the top card of the deck, you can put it on bottom or top. The reason why it's a 2-drop is because of a Merlin card that's in the multicolours, which very much likes it. If you're playing Bruno, that's another thing as well. If you're playing Isabella, that's I think it's kind of like liking that as well, like the Bruno Isabella deck in Blurpool, which this card is more advertised towards. So yeah, that's pretty much the main reason for it. Moving on to our 3s, the 3-drop, well, the 4-drop Kida, the 4-drop 3/3. It is a what's the name of the card? How far I go on a tap ability, except you put the second card on top of deck. I think this is quite good, actually. Being able to play it on turn 3 after playing the Tipper or Sail the Azure IC, using it to ramp and then play How Far I Go to ramp again is actually pretty prominent as well. I don't think she replaces Tala, but if you want a Tala replacement, this is kind of like a Tala replacement, realistically. So yeah, you can turn 4 into 6 ink, which is quite good actually. It's actually not bad at all, if I'm just going to be perfectly honest. So yeah, that's like the main reason why I put it as a 3. The 1-drop Monsoir, I don't know his actual name. It's Hiram on. It's just Hiram. It's just mini Hiram. The longer he lives, the better he is. I think he probably gets ran into Blue Steel a little bit. You kind of need that kind of card. Yeah. But no, I do think Blue Steel likes this card a lot. Maybe a little bit of Blue Red, because it gives you an early card advantage after you've cracked your Popsicles. So, yeah, pretty much. All is Found, I think, is the name of the 5-drop action, which is the other card that I've put as a 3. You can sing it to put 2 cards from your bin to your Inkwell as exerted. That's prominent. It's ramp. It's good ramp. You kind of need that for blue. I think it gets Tecton. I don't think it's like this card is like a massive instant auto include. I think it is you tech this in to try out, and I think it's desirable on the cards that you do tech it into, if you get what I mean. So yeah, but the cards that I wanted to talk about a bit more in depth, which are the Scrooge McDuck, the Tamatoa, the Bal, and Sapphire Coil. The Scrooge, I think, is the second best legendary in this entire set. Being able to spawn it out for free is a desirable point. Do I think that this card is going to break the game? No, not really. Do I think that this card is really good in blue steel? Yes, I think this card is really, really good in blue steel. I think this is incredible on turn 3 or turn 4. Because if you get the line and you kind of go Magical Christmas Land, you can go turn 1 Popsicle, turn 2 Force-Sphere Popsicle, turn 3 any item, play this out for free. And then play the Bal out for free, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the fact he can go 1-1 as well is also pretty prominent. The fact he is a 4-4-4 is not bad either. That's a good stat line. I'm glad he only quests for 1 because you can just cheat him out. Being able to cheat out a card like him is pretty prominent as well. So yeah, the fact he can sing How Far I'll Go, it's just a good card. It's genuinely just a good card. I can't really knock it. So that's the reason why I've put it there. Do I think he also works in Ruby Sapphire? To some extent. I think there is a Ruby Sapphire deck that does like him, and that is the reason why he's there. So pretty much he is within my top 5 cards in the entire set, as a spoiler alert when I go to that bit. So yeah. The other 3 cards that I wanted to talk about, which are all my 5-star cards, or my main 5-star cards from this set. Sapphire Coil. This card's great. This card's so good. I think this card is a little bit problematic to an extent because Caesar exists. It gives Ruby Sapphire the capabilities of what it needs. This card is going to get ran. This card is 1000% going to get ran. I can see decks go, I want this card in this game. I want this card in my deck right now. It trades really well into other things. It allows you to trade really well into other things. You can use it on Sapphire and Emerald to bounce your opponent's units with the Muses quite consistently. Sisu loves this card. Sisu absolutely loves this card. This is the Sisu card of the century, right? Like, you can use it to essentially go turn 3, I'm going to play my 1-drop Sisu after I've inked, because I will give your character, which is very likely going to be like a 1-3 at this point after playing it, and kill it. Yeah, this card's great. This card's really, really good. I think it's one of those cards that kind of speaks for itself and how prominent it is, so that's just one thing to bear in mind. The Bal. This is the card that everyone says is going to break the game. I think it doesn't break the game actually, but I think it is a very good card. I think this is a bit more desirable in blue steel, if I'm going to be honest, over Ruby Sapphire, unless you're playing flat on items. If it hits the nuts, it hits the nuts. I think in blue steel it has more prominent play position where you can go turn 1 Popsicle, turn 2 Force-Sphere Popsicle, turn 3 just any 3-drop item, turn 4 Scrooge McDuck, Bal, Hiram for 4, where you play 11 ink worth of stats, and you gain 2 cards, and you're also ready for the turn proceeding with it as well. If you play out on turn 1, is she a problem? She's annoying. Do I think she's good? Yes. Do I think she is going to get ran? Yes. I think that this card is 1000% going to get ran into a deck. Some people have seen this card and people are already looking at trying to break this card. People are trying to figure out what the value is. People are trying to make item decks an actual thing. Do I think that she is better in blue steel over Ruby Sapphire? Probably. I think she is better than that. I think the shift target for her is really good though, I will say. So that is also the reason why she's a 5, because if you see her in Ruby Sapphire, you're very likely to see that shift target, especially with her kind of effect. Do I think there is a small problem with her? A little bit. I think you have to be a little bit careful of the design choices that you're making in the game, especially if you're making more one-drop draw cards for items, because it makes her better, realistically, especially if you put them in Ruby. So yeah, pretty much. The other card as well, which I think is the best card in the entire set, is Tamatoa. On play, salvage 2 items. On quest, play an item for free. Yeah, no, this card's great. This card's really, really good. It's versatile, he's good in a bunch of decks, and I think even in Sapphire, being able to play Lucky Dime for free on 6, on top of a 7-drop, is kind of incredible, if I'm just going to be honest. You can Tamatoa, and if you have Fishbone Quill out, you can go Tamatoa, okay, cool, play Tamatoa and a free item, on top of getting free items as well. Yeah, no, this card's kind of correct, if I'm just going to be honest. This card is very desirable. This card is likely going to break the meta, in my opinion. Or I think that this card's going to be ran into a deck very quickly, and I wouldn't be surprised if people try and break him. Dime with him, it's a pretty obvious one. People like Dime. Here's a good card to have in Dime. You can probably get him out on turn 5 of the game, maybe a little bit earlier than that, maybe turn 4. Depending on how you want to go around it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's why I think this card's good. I think this card is scary, and it should be like respected as a card. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it for the Sapphire stuff. I think Sapphire's genuinely got the best cards in the entire set this time around, and I would not be surprised to see Sapphire do really well this set. Like, as I said before, if you're not playing Sapphire, you're probably not playing a competitive deck, or your deck's probably not going to be as good as it could be, because Sapphire's just got so many good cards this set. So I would highly recommend looking at, if you're playing competitive players, looking at Sapphire and looking at what you can break with it, because it is off the charts on this one. So yeah, I know I'm probably being like a bit like, oh, you have to do this if you want to play more competitive, but I think there's also going to be other decks as well, 100%. But no, this is probably the color to look out for in this entire set. But there is one more color as well before the multi-colors, so we'll talk about that first. Okay, and to round us up with the last ones of the monocolors, that is going to be steel. There are a couple of cards that I do think are like really, really good as well, and I do think they're in my top 10. But we'll go through the obvious ones pretty quickly. All the 1-drops are either vanillas, or they just don't really matter too much, realistically. I will say Dr. Calico is actually kind of okay, but I don't think he's going to be ran at all. I don't think Razul is good anyway, and Aquila 3/2 is kind of cute. Banzai's the thing though, so yeah, he actually, to be fair, he actually might get ran. I do think 3/2 stat lines are kind of subjected to get ran, but that's literally because of thingy. So Kakamora, from what I recall, the card does something like it gives your pirate characters Challenger 3. And I can't remember how he does it. I think it's when he quests or when he challenges. But I don't think that's bad. I think he's probably like the 1.5 of the 1-drops in this one, if I'm going to be honest. TikTok, I wish he was just evasive, if I'm going to be honest. During your turn, gain evasive is better than this current one. That's why I think he's probably like one of the worst ones. Bianca and Orville, I think Bianca and Orville only work together, and they are only good if Miss Bianca is cheated out early on 4. A 4-mana 5/5 is actually pretty good, if I'm going to be honest, so I do think that her stat lines and such could more likely be closer to like a 2. Miss Bianca is probably a 2 if I'm just going to be brutally honest, but I think she's really good in draft. I don't think she's like good in like anything else realistically. But yeah, pretty much that. Overall, it's pretty good. A 4-3 is okay. I don't think it's as desirable as well. Steel Coil, draw discards, kind of whatever at the moment. I don't think there's many decks that really want you to go through and like filter through your deck. And it's kind of funny that I say that because Mulan's there as a 3, and I'll go through that in a bit. Outside of that, I don't think there's many other like 1-drops. It's like 1s. Oh, I guess Devire as well, actually. During your turn, when a card is put into your ink, this character gains resistance until the start of your next turn. The problem with that is that while it's cool, while I really like that card, and it could be a cool card with Steel, especially with the other Raya, she is a 1-4, and 1-4s are not desirable for trading. So, yeah, pretty much that's the main thing. That's pretty much it. Moving on to our 2s, however. So the first one is Bolt. Whenever requested, if you have no damage, you may draw a card and discard. So he isn't a 2 because of the ability. He is a 2 because of the stats. Because of the shift target that works with him. I think the shift for him is good, and I don't think he's good. So that's kind of why he's a 2. So Fei Zhao, his ability is when something challenges, if it's the second challenge of a turn, gain 3 lore. There is a heavy emphasis on a red steel deck that's coming around this time around, and I think he fits right into that as maybe like a 2 of, because he is a lore gain engine for a deck that needs to gain lore or more lore. So yeah, that's pretty much the main reason for it. Do I think he is good? Yeah, I don't think he's that desirable as a 3-drop. Do I think he's going to be ran? A little bit. Helga Sinclair, Challenger 3 on an evasive. She's essentially like a 3-4, and I think on evasive is actually pretty relevant because it trades into other things quite nicely. That's the reason why I have as a 2. I don't think she's going to be ran realistically, but she's a cute card. The double attack is a 2 because I think there is some relevancy to dealing 1 damage to 2 characters, and I think that's quite nice. Training staff, realistically, I think it's a 1. I don't think it's going to be ran like at all, but I think there is a deck that does actually have some space for it as a tech option. Primarily, as I said before, red steel. A lot of steel in the set is kind of focused a little bit towards red, with a few tech options for other things as well. So yeah. Hey, a 1-mana 2/2 vanilla. So why have I got as a 2? It's because I like the shift target. I think the shift target's really cool, and I think that that's the reason why it's a 2. It's like why you'd run the Robin Hood, because the Robin Hood Legendary is very, very good, you know. The Tuk Tuk, I know that people are saying that he is probably going to be like a 1 and unplayable, and if I'm going to be honest, I kind of agree. The reason I put him as a 2 though is because I think he's a bit more annoying to get rid of than people expect. A 0/1 bodyguard that is resist 2 is a little bit frustrating. I wish you could deal damage back, but happens sometimes. It's kind of whatever. Restoring Atlantis. The reason it's a 2 is because it's actually kind of good, if I'm going to be honest. For an action, it's a good action. It's an annoying action, and annoying actions can happen, and they are allowed to be in the game, and that's like not bad at all. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see this. Mufasa is the same reason as Hey. He has a shift line. That's the main reason. It's not because of his stats. He doesn't have like great stats, but there isn't a Steel Mufasa, and there isn't a, from what I can remember, or an Amethyst Mufasa, which can shift into the multicolored Mufasa, which kind of is okay, I want to say. So that's the reason why he's there. Jafar. When you play this character, chosen character gets challenged to 2. On 3, kind of cute, you know, give it to another character, swing into something, get 2 traits on. The reason why he's there, as a 2 instead of a 1, is because Jafar exists. If I'm going to be honest, Jafar name is actually kind of relevant because of the Jafar decks, Jafar wheels specifically, so having more Jafars to be able to shift onto the big Jafar is actually relevant. And especially with set 8, we don't know what the card's going to be, but the likelihood is Jafar is going to get a legendary, which is going to be quite prominent. So Steel, Amethyst, anything Jafar related in that kind of regard is relevant, and that's the reason why it's there. The other ones as well, I don't believe there's any other ones. Oh, no, there is the Mickey Mouse legendary. Okay, so, yeah, I think this card's probably one of the worst legendaries in the entire set, if I'm going to be honest. I think the only deck he is good in, and I actually am loving the fact that this colour is getting a lot of support, is Steel Amethyst. I think that being able to crab into some big unit like Elsa or Genie is really cool. Do I think it's consistent enough to make it worth it? No. Do I think he's a dead card much later on in the game? Yes. Does he feel terrible if you draw him outside of 2? Probably. If you're not playing him on 2, if you play him on 2 and he dies, he's kind of garbage. Does he punish bad players? Yes. Does he punish good players? No. It's very difficult to punish good players with Mickey. It's kind of like the Trumpeter, where it's just there, doesn't really do anything. Does it die to things very easily? Yes. I think that this card is kind of dog. And when I say kind of dog, I mean very dog. I don't think this card's good. And that's why I put it as a 2. I think he's just a 1.5. I think he's going to be one of the cheapest legendaries in the entire set. Am I happy to be proven wrong? Yes, I do kind of want to be proven wrong with this Mickey. I think he can have some really, really fun gameplay mechanics, especially as more cards come out into the game. So, yeah. And if there's like a commander format that ever comes out in multiplayer, which is just kind of fun, I can see him being a commander where you run like a bunch of big stuff, you run a crab, and you just kind of like swing to build like a big board. But yeah. So I don't recall any 3... Oh no, there's 1 3 drop in here with the Aladdin. If I'm going to be honest, I cannot remember exactly what the Aladdin does. So I'll just have a quick gander at that. But I'm fairly certain it gives your ally characters... It's something to do with allies. Yeah, whenever this character quests, you may play an ally for free, and while this character is exerted, your ally characters get +1 attack. For 4 drop, being able to essentially cheat out 2 units, another unit, is kind of cool. And being able to make sure that unit is big is kind of cool as well. That's the reason why I've done that. Being able to cheat out an ally, and your allies actually have some pretty good cards, honestly, from what I remember. Anything that allows you to get card draw from that is actually pretty good. So that's the reason why I've put it as like a 3, because I can see this getting ran. I can see this having a surprising amount of play, probably not in this set, but in like later sets, or sets that you probably won't expect them to actually come out and play with. So I'd keep this in the books. I keep this as a side option that will probably get like teched in. So that's why I put it as a 3. The 4, Gantu. If I'm going to be honest, Gantu could probably be a 5. This card's insane. This card is so good. So when you play him, characters can't sing songs until the start. Characters can't exert to sing songs until the start of your next turn, and then each player has to pay 2 more to play songs, actions or items, unless they are sung. This card's great in Steel Song. This card's great in Amethyst Steel as well. And this card's actually pretty good in Blue Steel. Because you're not really caring about the reduction from him. If you're going to play him, you're going to play him last, right? You're kind of using him as a second Pete. You're using him to be annoying. You're using him to make it difficult for your opponent to actually do things the preceding turn. The disruption tools, especially a good disruption tool, is very prominent. And this is a good disruption tool. This is a really good disruption tool. He's a 4.5, if anything. He is probably one of my personal best cards in the entire set, and I think he's up there. The other one being I can't remember his name. He's the lion. He's one of the characters from Jungle Book. He's the Black Panther. He has Bodyguard, and when this card is banished, deal 2 damage to all your opposing characters. This card's nuts. This card's so good. If I'm going to be honest, this card is like in the top 4, in the top 5 cards of the set. I can also see him not being good, but the fact is that he is very obnoxious. He is a 4/3. 4/3s are difficult stat lines to get rid of. If you're playing an aggressive deck, you get punished for playing against the aggression, and that is a good thing. He actually turns games into very obnoxious ways to deal with board, so that's the reason. Being able to deal 2 damage to all your opposing characters is also very, very good. Having an on-board grab your swords for a deck like that is kind of scary. Is the deck good into hyper aggro? He's alright, actually. I think he is. The likelihood is that he's going to get teched in as the 2-of for a lot of decks. But I don't think he is going to be the prime focus as to defeating hyper aggro. I think Steel does a really good job against hyper aggro already, with a lot of removal anyway. So yeah, the other things as well is you can give him resist with Cogsworth. You can't give him Ward unless you're playing the Aurora package. He's just obnoxious. It's just a very obnoxious card, and it's a good obnoxious card as well. It's a very good card for Steel to have. And I think he kind of just fits into the mold of like still having really good legendaries. He's going to be one of the more expensive cards in the set. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in like the top 3. So yeah, no, good card, very, very good card. But no, those should be all of the monocolors pretty much as like a basis on like what I'm talking about with them. Are there any cards that I do think stick out in the monocolors? As I said before, I think there's about 5 cards that do so. And I will go through that in my like ranking later on in this video, just to say this is good, this is good, this is good. And I probably won't go into a more in-depth scenario about it discussion about it, because of the fact that I have kind of spoken about these cards on this side, and I don't really want to be someone to repeat my words and just like add on to content that's already been said, if you get what I mean. So yeah, but we are almost done. We have 60 more cards to go through. We have the multicolour cards to pretty much discuss, and that's basically it. Okay, so moving on to the multicolours. The multicolours, they are colours, if you don't know the ruling for them, they are colours that are only allowed to be ran in the 2 specific colours that they are advertised for. In terms of the multicolours as well, there are going to be cards that are going to be higher star rated than the other ones because of the fact that these colours, or like the multicolours being locked in, they're going to have better effects usually, really. But we will have cards which are 1-drop cards or 1-star cards in my opinion, like the Felix, Restoring the Heart, Mirabelle, and Perla. To quickly go over them, Mirabelle, the trouble is I don't think there is an Amethyst Amber deck which enjoys going through and playing songs out quite a lot, especially with the fact that the advertised Amethyst deck that you'll probably see is hyper aggro. So yeah, unfortunately I don't think that Mirabelle will get ran. I kind of wish he was on play instead of questing to get the song, because then it would be more prominent, because you can just go, okay, turn 3, I play a song, turn 4, I shift onto Mirabelle, I play the song again, you know? So that's like the main reason. Restoring the Heart, is healing. It does draw a card, so there is some relevancy to that, but the fact it is locked into those 2 colours of Amber Sapphire is not really the most potent, especially with a deck that doesn't really want to... If you want to heal and draw cards, you want to use a Rapunzel over this. As a budget option, it's quite nice. You can use it with like Julieta and stuff like that, realistically. Perla, you are not running support in that kind of deck, or those 2 specific colours. That's why I've done like that. It's a pretty simple one. Evasive is quite nice. Evasive is actually pretty good, and it might give you a bit more, like, you might be a bit more incentivized to actually run a more support, like battle box deck with Perla. And when I say battle box, I mean a deck that allows you to challenge into other things and heal off and go from that realistically, and control the board a bit more like that. The Fix-It Felix is when a racer character is returned from bin or from your discard, you can ready another racer character they can't challenge for the rest of the turn. And that'll kind of go into our 2-drops a little bit, where Calhoun is the card that does like Felix. The problem with it is that racers have 2 different kind of like play styles. There is one that does challenge, where you do have rush and you do have stuff that attacks into other things quite consistently in the 2 colors. But the other deck as well, which people prefer, is the start line, finish line, where you're running stuff like the Maui event, the Maui action, to search for, I think like islands are pulled from the sea to search for the locations, and then try and loop that with the mini and stuff like that. I don't think that this card is really advertising enough for this kind of playstyle. That's pretty much it. Like, I will say the King Candy is pretty cool. I do like this concept that you can use the King Candy on... I wish the King Candy was on a different like stat line. Even if it was like a 3-mana 1/1, a quest for 1. I do think would be better. Or if there was a couple of changes in terms of stat line, you could get some really nice plays where you go Calhoun, discard Eraser, turn 3, play King Candy, turn 4, play Calhoun, turn 5, play Felix. You know? The problem is though, Calhoun kind of has some... She does have some desirability to her for being a 5/5, but I wish that the minus power was a bit more relevant to when you play Calhoun. I wish it was when you shifted onto Calhoun, you can discard a card to do that, so you can actually kill something with the challenge as well on 4. That's the reason why I put Calhoun as a 2, is because she is actually kind of a desirable shift target. Do I think races are good? I don't think this type of races is good. I actually do think the finish line races are better. I do like the King Candy. I think being able to use races and become like a battle box deck where you kill multiple things is kind of cool. The Felix is kind of whatever. But also the Felix allowing you to turn Calhoun into multiple swings is kind of cool as well, where you can kill one thing, return Racer, kill another thing, return a Racer, kill another thing, return one more Racer. So she can give you some pluses, but I think that it's not desirable enough as a deck to warrant it realistically. The other 2-drop, or the other 2, is a Wendy Darling. I think she's only good at Mufasa. I think Mufasa is the only deck that likes her. Do I think that you would run her to play her out? No, you don't want to play her on 7. You probably want to be cheating her out with Mufasa or something else realistically. So that's the reason she's a 2. Rhino's kind of in the same boat. Rhino is kind of whatever, if I'm just going to be honest. He's cute, I will admit. The problem with Amber Steel is that Amber Steel isn't really known outside of Mufasa for aggression decks, so that's why you play Rhino in Mufasa as well. Because if you proc him off the top, that's actually not a bad card, especially with how obnoxious it can be, making your Calhouns 3/4s, etc, etc, etc. So yeah, that's pretty much why I ran him as why he's a 2 instead of like higher up or lower down realistically. The other ones is Peg and Tramp. So the Tramp is he costs 1 less for each other character in play, and when you play him, you can draw X and then discard X. X is equal to characters on board. And I like the fact that he is kind of a top end, a quote unquote top end, where you play him on 4. After playing like Lady. Which is kind of cool, but I do kind of wish that Lady was a quest to make it a bit more prominent, that you can go, okay, draw everything, discard things. Use Lady to return characters back to hand that you've just discarded. But yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's an okay card. It could be better. It could be worse. But 2/6 is pretty obnoxious, and it's quest for 2, so it takes a few turns to probably kill it. It does just die to Brawl, unfortunately, and I do think with the fact that Ruby Sapphire is going to be messed around with a lot, I wouldn't be surprised to see this card not make any play because of Brawl being probably very, very prominent. Peg, or Peggy, whichever one it is from localization-wise, you can tap her to draw a card if you have 3 more characters. I like this card. In Zoo or or more aggressive decks, yeah, this card's good. We like card draw. We like card draw on 3 sometimes, and being able to give like those cards something is nice. So I'm just gonna say I rate this card a lot. I think she's probably a 2.5. I think she is one of the engines that make Zoo work, if anything. But yeah, and I believe that's it for the 2-drops. Yes, going into our 3-drops though, there are a few. Perdita, Bolt, Thunderbolt, Pongo, Hero, and Penny. Oh, and Pascal. Pascal's pretty easy. Evasive. Pardon me. Bless me. An evasive that is a 3/3. That quest for 3 is pretty obnoxious. He is pretty much just a Ray. He is a Ray that's locked into 2 colours. Ray wasn't a bad card. Pascal's probably a bit better, if I'm going to be honest. And he works really well for the colours that you want him in. If I'm going to be honest, he is perfectly fitable into Hyper Aggro, and you're probably going to be playing this as your turn 4 because he's obnoxious and this is just a good card. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him make a deck, if I'm going to be honest. Just splash straight into Hyper Aggro and just test it out. So Bolt, I like Bolt. I really, really like Bolt. This is the reason why I put the other cards as a bit higher up or a bit more desirable, because the 2-drop Bolt you can shift straight into the 3-drop Bolt, and the fact that he can get you early lore quite quickly is pretty good. The other things as well is that he can sing a song, he can banish an illusion. There is actually pretty feasible ways in Amber Sapphire, especially Steel Song, to facilitate this idea that Bolt will live for more than 1 turn, or Bolt will not take damage for more than 1 turn. So I like it. I think it's a good card. Perdita, so being able to play like a puppy for free is pretty cool. But the puppy's gaining ward is actually pretty good as well. The problem is it does kind of just die to Sisu still. Sisu is prominent. I do still wish that there was a card that was like all your puppies gain like +1 power, because it would make it more annoying. Like 3/4s are actually pretty good. But the wards are pretty good, because you have to deal with Perdita before you play the other thing as well. So that's the reason. Pongo is pretty good as well. I think Pongo is pretty solid, being able to play puppies for free, and it's also one of the coolest mechanics in the game. This is probably like one of my coolest cards in the entire set. Being able to play something out for free, and especially from Inkwell, is kind of cool, because the majority of the time you're going to be inking puppies, so it gives you that incentive to start playing more puppies into your Inkwell. And then if you're able to get 2 Pongos out, that's kind of cool. So yeah, this card's going to be run. Thunderbolt as well, I actually think is a really good card. If I'm just going to be honest, I think this card's very, very good. I think this card should actually kind of be... I think this is like the reason why you'd run puppies, and this card is a 4 in puppies, because the second you start running puppies and you go, okay, cool, I'm doing my stuff, that is what puppies going to end up doing pretty much. Having a bodyguard on a 3/7 is pretty prominent, is not easy to get rid of. You are likely going to have your opponent trading 2 characters into this, so yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just a good card. Mirabelle Magic Girl, which I kind of missed a little bit. Evasive Singer 5, that's good. That's genuinely really, really good, if I'm going to be honest. Singer 5 is pretty prominent. Evasive is the main reason why she's good. She is difficult to get rid of. She is likely going to be singing more than 1 song. I wouldn't be surprised if she sings 2 songs. So that's the thing that you have to bear in mind. And she progressively gets a bit better over time. She is currently kind of like a little bit of a nothing burger, but the more cards that come out, the more surprised you might be to see this card actually make play. This card probably does make play in some decks already. There is probably a Song deck that is viable enough, and I do think she is good in that. But I do think the reason she is primarily a 3, she is probably more of a 2.5 if anything, is because of the fact that this is happening, that she has had this whole thing of like being a Singer 5 and being evasive realistically. Not being difficult to deal with is pretty much the main thing for it. The last card as well, or the last 2 cards, Penny's good. Penny's really, really good. Hyper aggro, Mufasa, loves this. This is just a good card. Being able to heal damage from your Daisy Duck and give her resist after like turn 2 is nuts. Being able to be like, turn 1, Daisy Duck, turn 2, Piglet, turn 3, Daisy Duck, Penny, where you heal the Daisy Duck off is good, is really good, and really obnoxious. On like a 1-2 as well, I can see this card being ran. I can probably see this card being a 4. If I'm just going to be brutally honest, I think this card's very, very good and very, very like prominent. People should like look out for this card. I can see this card getting ran, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it getting ran in like, even in like Mines. I think Mine is going to love this card. Mine is going to absolutely like flaunt over how good this card is for it. So that's pretty much the main reason. Hero is a good card. Giving your Floodborn characters Ward and Evasive is very obnoxious. On 5 is pretty obnoxious as well, sometimes 4. Do I think that he is like the best card in the set? No. Do I think he is a cool card, and do I think he is going to create some really cool stuff? Yes. 4/6 is a really annoying stat line to beat, and the fact that he's evasive and multiple of your characters will be evasive, yeah, this card's cool. This card's really cool. I don't think I can really say much. I know that he is also getting an Enchanted and I believe the Set Chance promo as well. That's another thing as well that you have to bear in mind. So you're going to get more artwork of him. I think they are trying to push him as a card design, and I think he is a cool card design. I like him a lot, and I can't wait to see him being used. I think that's it for the 3 drops. Yes. We do have two 4-star ones. The one being Lady and the other one being Troubadour. So the reason for Troubadour is because he just replaces Ursula. If you have not played Steel Song is still kind of good. It's still like a tier 2 deck, and I think it still will retain its tier 2 status. Realistically. Maybe in the lower end of tier 2. But it ran Ursula, which was a 1/4 Singer 4. And Troubadour is that, but better, because Resist 1 is just annoying. Resist 1 means that you have to trade into it a bit more. I think the weirder parts of it is that Troubadour probably sees better play than Ursula, but Ursula probably has more desirability because of cards like Rapunzel existing, and the fact that if they trade into Ursula with a snake, you are going to be able to draw more cards. Pretty much that's it. So, but I think the Resist one is more prominent in more situations. The desirability of Ursula also comes with the fact that she has a shift target, a good shift target as well, where it's essentially a bare necessity is on a quest. So I think it's just preference between the 2 cards, because I think they're both 4s, and they are both ran in the respective same deck. It's basically, do you want to add more slots? Run Troubadour. If you want to probably run the Ursula package, do run Ursula as well, just to see how it goes. The last one is Lady. I like Lady. I think Lady is a really good card. I am a fan of recursion decks, and I am a fan of a deck that allows you to be aggressive with it as well. So that's the reason she's a 4. If I'm going to be more realistic, I think she is a 3. I think she is probably not as good, or 3.5, but I do think that she is a card that should be warranted and like looked out for, because you just don't know how good this kind of card will be. So that's pretty much like the main reason. So I do keep an eye out for this card. I do think that this card is one that is to be tested and one to check, especially with the fact that when more cards come out, if more discard decks or more like decks that lean into the ability of you having to mill from the top of your deck come into play, Lady does get more value, especially as the game goes on. Being able to plus cards is always good. So she is an on-play +1 if you've done things correctly. So, but that is a third roundabout of our multicolours. We do have some more colours to go through, so we will go through to them as well. Okay, so moving on to the second part of the multicolours. We do have some more 1-drops. I am going to be honest, I think Svender's bad. I think Mad Hatter's bad. And I think Mad Medusa's pretty bad, if I'm going to be honest. Sven, unfortunately, gets kind of overshadowed by Elsa being a thing and Elsa being more prominent in other decks. So we are a little bit Elsa. I'm going to be honest, I am a little bit Elsa pilled. The Mana Medusa is okay, but the problem is that the colours that she's in do not desire or really, really wish to mill chosen players' decks or deal damage to your own characters, because you're not going to be moving them easily. If it was Amber, there would probably be a bit more argument for it, because you then have stuff like Chernobog, which would really like that. Or if it was Amber Amethyst, that is. Chernobog would really like this. The engine for Maleficent and Rapunzel would really like this. There is an argument to run Maleficent with other cards as well, and I can see why the cards kind of work out together, but yeah. Unfortunately as well with the mill colours that you're going to be using are Steel Amethyst, so she doesn't actually fit a place in there either, so it's an unfortunate card design, pretty much. The Mad Hatter, he isn't bad, but there are cards that do his job but much better. Like the Queen Shift, like the early Queen Shift and stuff like that, realistically. Moving on to our 2 stars though. Maid Marian is alright, but the reason why Maid Marian is a 2 is because of how good Lady Cluck is. I think Lady Cluck's a really good card. So, but also, when you are challenging Lady Cluck, you're turning Lady Cluck into like a ping 1, and I'll go over that a bit more when I get to it. The Jafar deck, the reason he's a 4 is because there's only like one good illusion, in my opinion, and there's and it's showing on this right now. It's a Giant Cobra, but I do think Jafar works well, not because of just the stat line, and the reason he's a 2, he's probably more realistically a 1.5, but the reason he's a 2 is because he is a wonderful target to shift into the big Jafar. A 4 drop into a 5 drop, yeah, that's what we need for Jafar Wheel, and that is pretty much prominent for what it is. Do I think that illusions are bad? No. Do I think that illusions are kind of cool? Yes. So it's nice to have a card that allows you to keep repeating those illusions as well. But I think the problem is that if you're running illusions, you are likely going to be running the min package for only one of the illusions, because it allows you to keep recurring the same card, which is Giant Cobra. So we'll go over that in a little bit, or like when we get to there. Mufasa. So you can turn 4 Mufasa, turn 5 Mufasa, and I think the 5/7 resist 1 on Evasive isn't actually that bad. We've had cards like it before. We've had cards like the Hercules, which is just a big unit, which some people just can't deal with. It's a cool card, and I like it a lot. So that's the reason why it's up there. Do I think it's like really good? No. Do I think it's just a solid stat line? Yeah. Lorcana would really like this card. It's a very fun card for Lorcana. So, Diablo, not Diablo, Cusco, because Diablo is a bit more of a prominent one. At the start of turn, each player chooses a card and discards it, or each player draws a card on a 4 drop. I think there is going to eventually be like a group hug, group slug deck with purple green, where you run this, you run the Donald 5-drop, and you turn it into a game where everyone's just drawing cards and being nice to one another, and then you make them discard everything with like bend to your will and stuff like that. The problem is, however, is that it's the two colours that don't really like it. It's a fun card for group play. I don't think it's that good in like solo play. I think there are better cards realistically. So, yeah. Yzma is a shift 5 evasive. Whenever another character is challenged is banished in a challenge, you can return it to that player's hand, and that player discards a card at random. The problem is that it also affects you, so this is a bad card. We do not like this card. This card is probably more of a 1, if I'm going to be honest. It's probably like a 1.5. If you can banish your opponent's characters and make it more obnoxious, sure. But there's a bunch of times that this card works really well, and there's a bunch of times that this card doesn't work really well. Unfortunately as well, there isn't actually a Yzma card that's ran in like competitive right now from the top of my head, outside of like the 6-drop. That's this You're Welcome, but not on a song. I think that's also not ran much at all anymore, so yeah, that's the reason why. The Merlin, Clairvoyant, I like this card. I think this card's really cool. And I do think that the card itself is probably more of a 2.5 over a 3, over a 2. Being able to ramp quite early and blow up all is pretty cool, and being able to go for that, probably whiffing it, and then turning it into a snake is pretty nice as well. It's a good turn 1 play. It's got the support around it, so you can actually look at the top cards of your deck. Stuff like that realistically. So that's the main reason why I'm going and saying that this card isn't bad. This card could be better, this card could be worse. There is probably a deck for it. You have to find out though. The Anna is okay, but the reason she's a 2 is because the Elsa is pretty damn good. So that's pretty much it. But being able to freeze an opponent's unit is quite nice. Being able to turn 3 Elsa, turn 4 Anna, turn 5 Elsa again is kind of cool, and then turn 6 Big Elsa. It's a nice lockdown. The problem is that there's not many decks that really care too much about it. It's a thing of like the Mim engine is so good and so prominent that it's difficult to make a kind of deck which likes to play around this. So I'm going to be honest, the Tika is a 1.5. It's not a 2. There is unfortunately not really that much of a combo deck at the moment which really likes it in these 2 colours. I do think if you have lost a game by turn 7, or if you are not able to defeat a Tika by turn 7, or turn 8, you're kind of losing the game, or you've kind of misplayed to some extent. The problem is that it's during your turn, and there's no easy way in red-purple to ready your opponent's characters, or force them from not being able to quest. So that is a big problem, and that's why Tika's not that good, because they can just quest out and just carry on. There is the whole argument of playing Tika into Anna. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good at all. So that's the reason why. Kronk is ward, and when you would discard a card, you don't discard any. The reason this is a 2 of is because it's a tech option. So this is only teched into the deck if you're playing against a hyper like aggressive meta of discard, or like that kind of control. Kronk is pretty much there to stop that from becoming prominent against you, so it makes sense. Hades, when you play this character, you can deal 2 damage to another character to banish another character. The reason I've put this in there as a 2, and it's probably a 2.5 if I'm going to be perfectly honest, is you can use cards like Prince Eric to kill 2 things. It's kind of like a Teeth and Ambitions, but a better Teeth and Ambitions, because it comes with a 4/6 body, where you can kill. You can play like Prince Eric on 4, play Maui on 5, quest with Eric, play Hades and kill 2 things. It's not bad. it's actually not a bad like card at all, and I wouldn't be surprised if some sense of Ruby Amethyst runs this just to get some board, some damage numbers and like trying it out. Maybe a one-off kind of thing. So, moving on to our 3-drops. So, there is another 2-drop. There's the Mother Gothel. When one of your character challenges, you may move a damage counter to another one. The way that this works, by the way, from what I remember, is that if you have a character that has 1 life left that has damage on it, you move the damage before taking the damage. So there is ways to being able to cause like the Mother Gothel in red, the like 2-drop to challenge quite nicely into another thing, into like a 1/3 or something like that. So yeah, pretty much. And then the Family Madrigal, top 5, you can sing it, add a character and a song. It's slightly better than Look at This Family. The problem with the card, however, and I think people might disagree with me, is that the Mirabelle shift really likes this card, but also the Mirabelle that shifts doesn't like using this card at all, if you get what I mean. It doesn't get this card back, so it doesn't like this card. I wish it kind of just returned song instead of thing. This is kind of why. The Madrigal is actually a good card. It's a decent card, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this card ran in some build later on down the line. But I don't think that this card is that good, especially with the fact that it is a Madrigal specific card, so you are going to be running a theme deck in realistic like standpoints. So that's pretty much it. Other cards as well from the 2s, there are none. So we're going to move to our 3s. So the 3 ones, so the Diablo is a evasive 1/2 with Challenger 2. I like this card a lot, if I'm going to be honest. I wish the card was a card draw engine, but evasive, being able to swing into other things, is quite nice. I will admit you have to work a little bit harder to get rid of stuff like Elsa or Genie, so you do have to run Crab with it, but I still don't think that's bad. I think it's pretty decent, so it's just a good stat line. Like a 3/2 that you could probably trade into one thing, play Fox, trade into another thing. Yeah, it's not bad. I think it does get broad, but I can also see a place where this is ran into a more mid-range version of like the current tempo deck, if you get what I mean, where you play a tiny bit slower, but you're using that to give yourself some more board control. The Elsa, I think the Elsa is just good. The fact that you can play the Elsa, make it that you freeze an opposing's character, you kill something with her, and then the preceding turn after, you can play the 5-drop Elsa, or even go into like the big drop Elsa. I believe she is a shift 5 or shift 6. So, I mean, good card's good. So, yeah. Restoring the Crown. Restoring the Crown, I love this card. I think this card is really good. And I think this is like one of the cards that you want to be running Purple Steel with. Being able to just casually gain lore whenever you want is pretty good. Hyper Aggro hates this card to bits, and if you are challenging, which you are likely going to be doing at some point with Restoring the Crown with Calhoun and such, being able to turn Calhouns into Fortlores is kind of nuts, if I'm going to be honest. So yeah, this is a card to watch out for. I think it's ran as a 2 of, maybe a 1 of, but I think it's more like a 3.5 and sort of 4 instead of just a 3. But that's the reason why it's there. The Queen, I think the Queen's really good as well. I think the Queen's probably like a 4. Probably a little bit closer to a 4 than a 3. But whenever you play this character, whenever another character is played, put damage onto them in green-red. Yeah, this card's great. This card's really good. For 5, you can sing like Bruno if you wish to. You can be really annoying with her. Dealing 1 damage consistently to characters is annoying. You can make a deck where you run Vision Slab and Pack Tactics, but I don't think that's the prominent bit for it. I think the prominent part of it is the fact that the characters that you're going to be bringing out are going to be okay with having damage on them. I don't like it with cards like the Mother Gothel or like the Beast that take them down to 1 health, because this will just kill them, so don't run it with this. But cards like the other Queen really desire this card, because you can turn your Queen like 2-drops into 4/3s, and they can trade really nicely into other things, stuff like that. Your opponent having damage on their characters is obnoxious as well, so that's another thing to bear into mind. It also kind of kills hyper aggro. Especially if they're going to be playing their 1/1s where they just play it and they die immediately. So it is a good card. It is a very good card. There are a lot of cards that hate this card, and I like it a lot. But moving on to our 5-drop, well, our 5-star card, and the only 5-star card, or one of the only 5-star cards are multicolored. If I have another one, I can't remember because I did this all last night. Giant Cobra. Yeah, this card's insane. This card is so good. 3 mana 4/4 that you just gain 2 lore. Yeah, no. This is one of those cards that if your opponent can't deal with it on the turn that it's played, it spirals out of control really quickly. Like it becomes really prominent very quick. This is like the GOAT of the format. Especially in Purple Steel, you're going to be playing this, you're going to be playing GOAT, you're just going to be questing, and you have a 4/4 body and then a 4/3 body, where you're going to be going very fast and your opponent has to deal with this. This is very likely not going to be ran in a Visions deck, where a Vanish deck, an Illusion deck, as I would say, because this is not what you're trying to look for this to do. What you're trying to look for this to do is to help and close out games, and this is very easily going to replace White Rose, or it's going to be ran alongside White Rose to give you more just lore gain on 3. I don't think this is going to be ran over Fox, or I think Fox actually might not be using this, or you could run it coincide with Fox for this kind of capability. But the fact is thinkable, yeah, this card's great. This card is so good. This card is like mwah, top tier. Genuinely one of the best cards in the set as well. Don't be surprised to see this card be ran into multiple decks. Don't be surprised to see this card actually break the meta to some extent. So, yeah. Okay, and then the last section, or last amount. So, quickly going through the 1-drops. I think the Beast is kind of bad. It's cool with Bell, and I do think he is probably probably closer to a 2 instead of like instead of a 1. So he's probably like a 1.5 realistically. Banishing 2 items after playing it isn't bad. I think the fact that you have to pay 2 for it is kind of unfortunate. Dealing 5 damage to 1 character is kind of upsetting as well. I wish it was dealing like 2 instances of 4 to 2 different characters, as it would be a bit more like flavorful, because you're banishing 2 items to kill 2 things, you know. But I do think at that point it becomes a lot better of a card. So yeah, it makes sense for balancing perspective over the other side. Mr. Smee, I don't think Pirates have that many good songs in Green Steel. I kind of wish he was red, because it would actually make other cards more prominent. So, you know, like Fan the Flames and stuff like that. But with Mr. Smee, you can get away with a really cool interaction where you go, okay, I'll play Mr. Smee. Turn after, I'm gonna play there's a steel action where there's a couple of steel actions where you can give resist to characters, and one of them gives your heroes, they can attack another character. You could play something like that, which is kind of cool. The problem with him not being in red as well is due to the fact that Maui Half-Shark exists, and Maui Half-Shark would actually really like this card, because you could just do red green pirates and do something like that. So it's unfortunately not good at the moment, but when more actions come out and more pirates come out, he will become better. Going into our 2s, John Silver's really good. I wish it was 1 damage to all opposing characters instead of chosen character, because it just makes it a little bit worse. The other problems as well is that he just isn't that good. You don't really want to play him on 6. I wish it was a shift, so you could, you know, turn... One thing that I think would be really cool would be like turn 3, play the John Silver from set 3 or set 4, turn 4, play this, turn 5, shift into the big one. With like the resist 2, where you can ping damage onto readied characters. That could be kind of cool. But I don't think he's prominent enough for that, so yeah. The Nahi is quite nice actually. He's like a mini, like I think he's more of a 2.4 over like a 2.5 over a 2. Being able to deal damage is quite nice to another like character, and being able to live through multiple turns is really nice. So it unfortunately doesn't have like any traits outside of just Storyborn, or else there would actually be some cooler stuff with him. So that's the reason why. The Bat, I do not know his name. I think it's just Griefer. He is evasive when you quest with him. Give another character evasive until the start of your next turn. In red green, it's not really used that much. In green purple, it'll be a lot more enticing because there are cards that really like that. Especially if you're running the in green purple, especially if you're running like the Tinkerbell engine, you can be more aggressive with that as well, where you could do like turn 1 play Pegasus, turn 2 play double Morpho, turn 3 shift Pegasus, turn 4 play this, and then turn 5 turning those things into other shifts is pretty good. It's still but then also turn 5 playing out like another evasive like Tinkerbell, turn 6 going into Tinkerbell and just kind of volleying from there, like kind of like tempoing from there. He is alright. I can actually see a deck where he is ran in red green. I can also see decks where he's not ran, but hey yo, we live, we learn, you know. The other ones as well for my 2s are Maurice's Machine. So the reason it's there is because you sack something off with the bow, you use the Maurice to bring it back. The problem is that the bow shift target doesn't like it that much. And if I'm going to be honest, this card is probably not run like at all. It is probably more of like a 1 over a 2. The reason why I'm putting it there is because there are cards that do like this. I think it's more of the fact that the card itself is more beneficial from other cards. It's less beneficial from itself, if you get what I mean. The yokai is actually pretty cool, if I'm going to be honest. I unfortunately think that the yokai doesn't... I think there is a deck where you go yokai, hero, like the hero 3-drop where you search for an item, or you do yokai Baymax, which we'll be talking about in a little bit anyway. So but outside of that, there's the rest of the cards in the multicolors aren't bad at all. So going to like the 3s, Gizmoduck. I actually think Gizmoduck's a really good card. Resist, that can challenge like damaged characters in a deck where you are very likely going to be doing like a potential turn 5 Tinkerbell, is very prominent, or turn 5 deal damage to all of your opposing board and then challenge something is actually quite good. Baymax, I think Baymax is good. I think Universal Shift is awesome. I genuinely think this is like one of the coolest mechanics in the entire set. But being able to turn 3 play a 6 mana 5/5, that's good. That's really good. A 6 mana 5/5, which is difficult to deal with, heals as well, and it's just annoying. Yeah, I mean the cards. This card's good. I do think the Baymax is likely to be a 4 over a 3, and I can see him being better. He's definitely a 3.5, if I'm going to be realistic about it. But he is good. He is actually really, really good. The Pete's annoying, because being able to force it that he is a 5/5, or technically a 5/6 at points because of resist, or 5 extra X. X is however much damage you have to deal to him. But your opponent can't sing songs. It kind of kills Steel Song, especially after playing the Pete previous, like the turn before. So yeah, because the likelihood is that you're going to be playing turn 3 Pete, turn 4 shifting onto this, questing with it, and just making an annoying body to beat with. So it's a good card. It's a really good card. The Mulan, where when she challenges another character, your other characters gain it could challenge readied characters, is also really good. This is a good card. Evasive as well, shift 5. You can happily run this with Maui Half Shark and turn Maui Half Shark with Fan the Flames into board wipes pretty much by turn 7. Or like opponent board wipes, not just your own board wipes, if you get what I mean. There is already a deck that's floating around which is Red Steel challenging with actions, and this Mulan fits right into it. So I can't really blame the designers for it. The Bal, I think this Bal is really good. I think she's like closer to a 4 than a 3, but I think she's really, really good. Being able to shift her down for like 4 early is prominent. Being able to make it difficult, I think she is, if you're going to be running a game plan where you are primarily focused on getting this Bal out as consistently as possible, yeah, the likelihood is that you are going to be running this Bal as a 4 of, you're going to be running the other Bal as a 4 of, you're going to be running the items that need to get sacked as a 4 of, or other items that will sack itself, i.e. Porpsicle as a 4 of, you know, that kind of stuff. There are reasons for it, so then there will be decks that are built around this card because of the previous Bal. So, the Beagle Boys, so whenever this character quest, choose a character of yours, gains Rush and Resist 1. I like this card in blue-red. So this is a tech option, if I'm just going to be perfectly honest. The reason it's there is because it gives a character that you're going to be playing the ability to kill, very likely kill something of your opponents. I think it fits into the Maui Half Shark build, where you go, okay, cool, turn 5 or turn 4, depending on when you want to play it. You play How Far I'll Go. You turn 5 play Maui Half Shark. You turn 7 swing with Beagle Boys. So you quest with Beagle Boys after playing them on turn 3. Use it to swing with Maui Half Shark and give them a bit of resist, and then get like a Develop Your Brain or some sense of action. So I think they do actually kind of fit into that deck as well, or I think there is a deck where they do become a bit more prominent. So I think this is a tech option. I don't think it's like a card that you'll be going, okay, I need to build a deck around this ASAP, right? So they are a card that gets thrown into the deck. They are not a card that you build a deck around, if you get what I mean. Moving on to Jasmine. Jasmine is also a, whenever there's character quest, if you have no cards in hand, draw a card for each ally in play. You can play hyper aggro. This is a card that is there to play hyper aggressive with your allies. You put everything into your inkwell with other cards, and then you just go. And it's cool. It's actually a really cool card. I wish it was a little bit better. I think it's more of like a 2.5. But Ayo, being able to have just aggression onto blue steel is nice, especially as a deck that relies quite feasibly sometimes on getting like the actions for card draw, and in a deck that quite commonly runs allies, actually, because you're running stuff like, if I recall correctly, Baymax, who is an ally, and some other cards I think that are allies, like Cogsworth. So she does work out with that deck quite nicely. And I forgot to talk about it, but to shift into it as well, we will talk about Hey, which is an ally in blue steel. And this is honestly one of my favourite designed cards in the set. I love this card so much. When you play this card, when you play this card, you have to ink everything from your hand exerted. This card's funny. Do I think there's a deck for this? Yes. Do I think I want to make this deck? Yes. If you do not know what a deck is, the deck idea is that you play Grandma Tala on turn 5. You use Grandma Tala to sing A Whole New World, and then you try and hit the high roll, and you hit the hey to gain 6 law, so and turn. That's basically it. Yeah, it's a fun card. Is it a good card? No. It is very, very risky. So, yeah, I am going to be honest, this card is not going to get, like, heavy play, but I can see people trying to actually, like myself, try and make a deck around it because it's actually such a fun designed card. So, moving on to our last 3-star card, which is... everyone's talking about this one, or this is a card that people are going to say are going to break the game, and people are probably going to put it as a 5. Ink Geyser. I don't think it's that good. I think it's obnoxious. Do I think it's a great card? Not really. I don't like giving my opponents card draw. I do not like it with Clarabelle. I don't think it's good with Clarabelle, because you draw up to your opponent's cards and then you give everyone pretty much the same amount of cards, but you're likelier to be drawing more cards because you are playing a ramp deck, so you're quite quickly going into this, where your opponent won't be. Yeah, this doesn't really matter. A lot of the cards that you're going to be seeing as well are going to be on turn 3. It's an obnoxious card and it takes a little bit of time. I think there is a deck that does run this and really likes it, and I am building it and trying it, which is the Mufasa You Came Home, You Came Back deck, where you can pretty much use Ink Geyser as like a closeout point to keep Mufasa alive realistically, and the rest of the deck becomes a little bit more aggressive in the early game to facilitate that realistically. So yeah, that's my standpoint on it. I don't think there's really a deck at the current point of time that makes this card worth it. Do I think there is a deck that will come out to make this card worth it? Yes. I think that this card's kind of one of those cards that you have to always look on the design point for, and you have to be a bit careful for, because it can break it. This is a card that people are going to try and break, and if you can break it, then it's going to be very difficult to deal with. The thing that I like about it, though, in You Came Back is that this card is very desirable, because in You Came Back, the problem with it is that you aren't able to easily easily ink You Came Back, do it again, because those are your main combo pieces. Ink Geyser makes it a lot more desirable when you put them in from Fishbone Quill on Tipo. So, yeah. I think in other decks it's kind of whatever, really. So, yeah. I think my opinion might be a little bit controversial on that, and I think my opinion is a little bit like, for a lot of people's decisions about this card. I think this is one that you have to run and test and see how it feels before you go into other things like that, though. So, test it out, see if you like it or not. Moving on to our 4 drops, we've got our 4 stars. One of them is Li Shang. I love this card. I think I'm going to be heavily incorrect on this card as well, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I would not be surprised if this card just doesn't get ran. It can challenge rated characters, and if it has damage, it's a 4/3. This card's great. This card, in my opinion, is so good. And this is one of the cards that I want to test around with. This is one of my personal favourites of the entire set. And I am very much valuing this card. If I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if this card is actually just dog. I wouldn't be surprised if someone just looks at this and just goes, what's this opinion? This opinion is absolutely crazy. And yeah, the reason why I like it is that the likelihood is it's going to challenge into 2 things. It's probably going to take 2 things out in a deck that, well, being able to challenge ready characters is really nice as well. Being able to use Fan of Flames with it to kill 2 things is pretty cool as well, and stuff like that. So yeah, this card I think is probably a really good uncommon that people are just not going to expect, but I can also see it just not being played by any standards because of what the card is. So, do I wish it was like a 2 mana 2/3? Yeah, 100%. But ayo, we dream big. So yeah, and then the last 4-star card in my opinion is Lady Clark. This card's brilliant in blue still. Let's be honest. Ward, guess who gets part. So it's a 5 mana bodyguard where you'll probably play it and then you play Cogsworth on like turn 5. It has ward, so it gets around stuff like brawl. your opponent has to trade multiple things into it. Well, it doesn't have to trade multiple things into it. It just becomes a bit more obnoxious. It doesn't kill things flat out. It just prolongs the game and makes it a bit more obnoxious. It's a good card. If you are playing Lady Marion with it, then you get more benefit from it. Do I think that Lady Marion with Lady Cluck is good? Made Marion into Lady Cluck. Yeah, it's okay. It's alright. Being able to make Lady Cluck deal 1 damage back to everything is pretty cool. But I think this card is very desirable. I think this card is a very, very good card that will probably be ran straight into Blue Steel. And Blue Steel isn't actually a bad deck, and I think it becomes a lot better this set. I think that there are 2 different Blue Steel decks that do come out of this, and I think Blue Steel is kind of going to be riding high on this set. So it's nice to see a deck that I personally felt wasn't that good from the get-go get a lot of really good support, especially after the set. So, and then the last card, which I think is probably the reason why you play Red Steel, or like one of the reasons why you play Red Steel, is Mushu. And thank you so much for making the Mushu card good. The Mushu card is really good. Just on chat when you challenge, resist 2 with any of your characters, and when you banish, gain 2 lore. Mwah. Fantastic game card design. Obnoxious stats. This card is like a reason why you play these 2 colors. These are like your turn 5 play. Like you turn 4 play something like a Ling Shang. You turn 5 play Mushu. Ling Shan is probably going to kill into 2 things. Your Calhouns become gain 4 lore. Your Robins become gain 4 lore. And you have the action from the previous. Oh no, sorry. The action from the previous one is Purple Steel. It's not red steel. Because if it was red steel, oh boy, this would be very, very disruptive very quickly. Yeah, this card's sick. This card is so good. But yeah, I mean, it's in my top 10, 1000%. And that's realistically it. That is kind of like my quick opinion on everything, or like my main opinion on a majority of the cards. I will be honest, when you look at a set, there will be cards that are very cool designed, and I think there's a lot of really, really cool designs in this set, and it probably is my favourite set of the entire game. But one thing to also take into realistic perspective is that a lot of the cards will not get run unless a new deck pops up. Don't expect like a lot of cards to actually be ran from a set. It happens every single set. There are going to be cards that are going to be a lot better than people expect, and there's going to be cards that are a lot worse than people expect. Just wait to see what happens with them, and then just kind of go from there realistically. But yeah, so that's that. I will talk about my my personal top 10 cards that I think are going to be good in a meta perspective, and my top 10 cards of which I think are going to kind of just be fun to play with as well. And those will pretty much be like my closing out thoughts on what I'm excited about in this new set. So yeah, talk about that. So moving on to my personal top 10 cards of the entire set. These cards are pretty much what I think in a vacuum are going to be ran and what I think are good cards. There are certain cards which I do think are ran correctly in specific decks, and that's why I rated them higher than you probably expect on my star charts over this. So these ones are the cards that I expect to be shifted into the meta and actually kind of create decks around it a little bit more, in comparison to the vice versa, where the card's just good value, and I think it's a good value card that we ran. Like, you know, like for example, let's say like Mushu, which I think was a 5-star, probably it's really good, but it probably won't be the thing that carries Red Steel into like an actual proper meta build, where in comparison to other decks, you know, that will be better than other decks, if you get what I mean. So going in from number 10 though, we are going to talk about Inkgeister. I think Inkgeister is a card that, while I don't think is that incredible, I do think there is going to be a deck eventually that breaks it, right, in probably even in the set, to be honest. and people are going to really try to make a deck around it, so it doesn't surprise me at all. I've already spoken my piece about it, so if you want to go back to that, go back a little bit further on, a little bit earlier on in the video. My number 9 is Li Shang, sorry. Probably butchering names every single time. I wouldn't be surprised if this card's bad. I wouldn't be surprised if this card's really good and people don't expect it. Yeah, it's a card that I think makes Red Steel good. I don't think it's a card that makes Red Steel into like a meta build. I think Red Steel is probably still going to be teetering at the end of like tier 2. So that's basically it. My number 8 is Lady Cluck. She is just really good in Blue Steel, and I think that Blue Steel really likes her. She is pretty prominent, and that's basically the main things why she's there. That's basically it. Number 6 is going to be Scrooge. Scrooge is in the same boat. I think Scrooge is a Blue Steel card. I don't think he's a Blue-Red card. I don't think he's a blue, like another colours kind of card outside of just Blue Steel. Because of the fact that he really benefits from this kind of notion of being able to be cheated out and just gain a good chunk of stats at like an early point of the game. So that's why. Do I think he makes Blue Steel the best deck in the game? No. Do I think he helps Blue Steel become a lot better? Yes. My number 6 is Mushu. I think Mushu is a huge reason as to why Red Steel is going to be a lot better. And if you see Red Steel actually do things, I think it is because of Mushu actually being a thing realistically. So yeah, I think Mushu is like the reason why Red Steel becomes a good card. Like a good-ish deck or better deck. My number 5 is Bagheera. I think that card's great. I've already stated my piece on it. I think that card is Montebueni is such a good card. Being able to grab your swords on a defense or on like an aggressive play is really good. Being able to kill it with your own kind of songs to deal damage to everything, insane. It's a card that is there that has to be figured out, and I think it's actually really scary. Just being banished to kill multiple things is terrifying. It doesn't even have to be opponent's turn from what I remember, so you can just kill it yourself to deal like 2 damage to your opponent's board and essentially board wipe them whenever you want, realistically. My number 4 is Gantu. I do think Gantu could probably be number 3. My number 4 and number 3 are pretty much like fluctuating between both of them. Gantu is just disruptive. It's a very disruptive card that that is going to be ran. I wouldn't be surprised to see it run into steel builds at all, even like outside of just other decks that you may see it in, because it allows you to play a bit more like aggressive against opposing decks and make it a bit harder for opposing decks to deal with you. So my number 3 is Tamatoa. Pretty obvious. The legendary is it's probably the best legendary in the entire set. Being able to +1 from him and then play something out for free, cheating stuff out for free is really good, especially a high cost item like Dime, and any item that comes out in the game later on he is going to be beneficial from. So yeah, I think he is the money card. I think he is going to be like huge money. So get ready to buy money, maybe. My number 2 is Bal. So I know a lot of people are going to be raving about this and being quite surprised that Bal is number 2. I think she is also kind of in the same slot as Tamatoa and Gantu, where I do think she could also be 3rd or 4th. I don't think she's as good as people are saying she is going to be, but I do think she's a very good card, and I wouldn't be surprised to see people run a lot of her or like try to break her. It makes sense. She is a potent card, and having sometimes a turn 1 3/3 is very difficult to deal with. So and my number 1 is Cobra. I think Cobra is insane. Giant Cobra is a really good card, very good stat lines. Some things just can't deal with it, and it's just going to spiral out of control in certain games. He is a kind of card that when he comes onto the board, you kind of have to deal with him, and if you can't deal with him, you're probably going to be losing the game. That's basically it. And I think he's just good stats. I think the fact that he will gain you 2 lore consistently in a deck that doesn't care too much about your hand draw is pretty prominent. So that's the main reason for Cobra. He's going to fit into a deck. I know he's going to fit into a deck. I know he's going to fit into multiple decks. So don't be surprised to see him like snaking around. And yeah, that's basically it realistically. Those are the cards that I think are going to shift the meta to some extent, or are going to be played to some extent, or be broken to some extent first, and then yeah. And then the last thing to kind of like close out my personal thoughts and stuff, I personally, for my top 10 of cards that I just think are fun and stuff that I really want to try first, going in just from 10 to 1, 10 being Scrooge, pretty obvious reason, I like cheating out stuff, and the fact he kind of can go 1 to 1 is pretty cool. Lady, I like aggro decks sometimes, and recursion decks, they're kind of cool. It's another deck I would love to try around and mess around with. Number 8 is Thunderbolt. I think he's just a good card, and I think Puppy Shift is a really cool mechanic, and you'll understand with the fact that there's another card in this, in my personal top 10 fun cards, that I like this kind of shift mechanic, especially when it's different and interesting. So my number 7 is Queen of Hearts, because it's just an interesting card. It's a card that you don't really get to see that much in these kind of games. It gets by resist, and it makes an interesting kind of playstyle. So number 6 is Merlin. I like this kind of ramp deck. This is a deck I did want to try quite a lot with, and I think it actually makes it a bit more prominent. So yeah, something definitely to try. Number 5 is the Donald Legendary in Amethyst. As someone who likes Toolbox and someone who likes to play a game where you get to decide how it goes at points, yeah, Donald's just obnoxious. He is a good card, and being able to sit there and just close the game out for a bit is pretty cool. Number 4 is the Troubadour. I am personally a big fan of the fact that he is just a better Ursula at points. So it's just my personal preference on that one, realistically. I don't think he does anything special. I just think he's a fun card to play around with. Number 3 is Baymax. Universal Shift is a really cool mechanic, and I love the fact that you can tailor around him as a build. Like, you can throw him into any build pretty much in blue, emerald, and he'd really enjoy it. It doesn't matter where you're going in with it or what you're doing with it. It's just a good card. Number 2 is Ingeiser. I love Sapphire Emerald, and I am so glad that there is a card that is obnoxious enough that I want to try and break. Do I want to try and break it in a bad way or a good way? I don't know, but I'll find out either way. And my number 1 is Pongo. I like the Puppies deck. I think Puppies is fun. I think Puppies is a really fun deck, and I love the fact that there's a mechanic that now gets to allows you to look at your inkwell. So that's a cool thing. So yeah, that's personally my number 1 that I'm actually quite excited about playing with. But in terms of the like closing out thoughts on set 7, I think set 7 is, design-wise, the best set in the entire game. I think that there are so many cool things that have happened this set, and that's all because of the multicolours, or the dual colours. There's a lot of really, really good cards in there. And I've said it before, not every single card will be a 10, not every single card will be ran immediately. I can be incorrect with these opinions, obviously. They are opinions. If I'm incorrect, I'm incorrect. If I'm correct, yippee! You know, that kind of stuff. But like, overall, I think it's a fun set. I'm excited. I'm really excited for March. I will be doing like a one unboxing video, and I will be like talking a bit more about the set and maybe a couple of the builds that I want to bring out, and maybe a little bit of gameplay as well. I'm not someone who's going to go out of my way and try and post consistently and like grow this channel out to be like this super big channel. I just want to bring it out there as something for people to hopefully enjoy, a little bit more in-depth conversation or a bit more commentary on that kind of side of things. But yeah, no, like, I'm excited. It's good. And if you've actually stuck around to the end of the video, I'm quite surprised, because this is going to be a long one. It's going to be like over an hour long. So, but yeah, thank you very much for watching the video today. Hopefully this gives you some insight to my own personal opinions and a couple of my own thought processes. Some of it is rambling, some of it will just be yapping in theory, like especially the later on the video goes on, because of the fact that I just spent like a good 2 hours just recording and doing nothing else. So yeah. Anyway, take it easy guys, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.